The night Ethan Cole found Celeste Vaughn collapsed in her penthouse hallway, gasping for air with blood on her lips, he made a choice that would save her life and destroy everything she'd built. America's youngest female tech CEO was dying, and nobody knew. Not her board, not her investors, not the millions who worshipped her perfect image. Just the night janitor who'd lost his wife the same way. This is the story of how a single father with nothing left to lose became the only person willing to tell a woman worth $340 million the truth she was terrified to hear. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. Hit that like button and stay until the end because what happened between them changed everything. The elevator doors opened at exactly 11:03 p.m., 3 minutes late, and Ethan Cole knew immediately that something was wrong. Not because of anything he could see. The 68th floor hallway of the Meridian Towers looked exactly as it always did. Cream marble floors polished to a mirror shine, recessed lighting that cost more than his car. That particular kind of silence that only existed in places where rich people paid extra to not hear their neighbors breathe. No. Ethan knew something was wrong because in the 4 months he'd been cleaning Celeste Vaughn's penthouse, she had never once left her front door open. Not even a crack. The woman was pathological about security. Triple locks, camera system that probably cost more than most people's houses. Hell, she'd made him sign an NDA thicker than his daughter's math textbook just to vacuum her carpets. But tonight, the heavy door stood open maybe 6 inches, and through that gap, Ethan could hear something that made his chest tighten in a way he hadn't felt in 3 years. Coughing. Not the polite hand-over-mouth kind. The deep, wet, desperate kind that sounded like drowning on dry land. Ethan stood there for maybe 10 seconds, his cleaning cart blocking the elevator doors, while the recorded voice told him to please step out because other residents needed to use the elevator. His hand hovered over his phone. He should call security. That was the protocol. He'd signed papers about protocol. The coughing got worse. Fuck protocol, Ethan muttered, and pushed the door open. The penthouse was dark except for the city lights coming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Los Angeles spread out below like a circuit board, all those tiny lives twinkling in their tiny boxes. Ethan had never gotten used to the view, probably never would. "Ms. Vaughn?" His voice sounded too loud in the darkness. The coughing had stopped, but that somehow felt worse. Ethan moved through the foyer, past the abstract sculpture that looked like a metal seizure and probably cost 6 figures. The lights were motion-activated, but they weren't coming on. Either she'd disabled them, or she was staying so still they couldn't detect her. He found her in the kitchen. Celeste Vaughn, the woman Forbes had called the Midas touch in Louboutins, the CEO who'd taken her company public at 28 and made herself worth more money than Ethan could conceptualize, was sitting on her kitchen floor with her back against the island, one hand pressed to her chest, the other gripping the edge of the granite counter like it was the only thing keeping her tethered to earth. She looked up when his shadow fell across her, and even in the dimness, Ethan could see the fear in her eyes. "Get out!" Her voice came out rough, destroyed. "You need to—" Another coughing fit cut her off, this one so violent her whole body convulsed. Ethan moved without thinking. 3 years as a single dad had given him a kind of crisis autopilot. He dropped to his knees beside her, one hand on her shoulder, the other reaching for his phone. "I'm calling 911. "Don't." She grabbed his wrist with surprising strength. Her hand was shaking. "Don't, please. I'm fine. I just need a minute." "Lady, you are not fine." "I said don't." The CEO voice came through, even shattered by coughing. The voice that commanded boardrooms and made investors open their wallets. "That's an order. You're not my boss. I literally am. I sign your paychecks. You sign MaidPro's checks, they sign mine. And even if you did, I'm pretty sure let you die on your kitchen floor isn't in my job description." She almost laughed at that. Almost. Then another cough doubled her over, and Ethan saw her spit into her hand. Even in the bad light, he could see the dark color. Blood. Not a lot, but enough. Something cold slid down Ethan's spine. He knew that particular shade of red. Knew it the way you know a song that played during the worst moment of your life. You never forget it, even when you want to. "How long?" he asked quietly. "What?" "How long have you been coughing up blood?" Celeste stared at him like he'd started speaking Mandarin. Then her face did something complicated, a dozen different expressions trying to happen at once before settling on blank. I don't know what you're talking about. Ms. Vaughn, you need to leave now. And if you tell anyone about this, anyone, the NDA you signed has a clause about penalties for breach of confidentiality. It starts at $50,000. Ethan sat back on his heels, looked at this woman who was threatening to sue him while sitting on her kitchen floor in a $1,500 blouse, shaking and pale and clearly terrified. My wife died 4 years ago, he said. That stopped her. Celeste's mouth opened slightly, then closed. I'm sorry for your loss, but I don't see what She coughed like that. Near the end, that same wet sound like her lungs were full of something they couldn't get rid of. Ethan's voice stayed level. He'd had practice talking about this, 4 years of therapy and single-parent support groups. Started with just regular coughs, told me she was fine, just a cold, just allergies, just stress. She had a lot of justs. Celeste wasn't looking at him anymore. She was staring at her hand, at the evidence there. By the time she finally went to a doctor, it was stage 3, lung cancer. Never smoked a day in her life, the doctor said. Sometimes it just happens. Genetic lottery. They gave her 18 months. She lasted 11. The silence stretched out. Somewhere far below, a siren wailed. Ethan wondered if it was an ambulance, and for who. I'm not dying, Celeste said finally. But her voice had lost that commanding edge. She just sounded tired. I'm not. This is just... It's stress. I've been working a lot. The acquisition talks with Meridian have been brutal, and I'm not sleeping enough, and... When's the last time you saw a doctor? I have an executive physical every year. When's the last time you told them the truth? Her jaw tightened. You're overstepping. Yeah. Ethan stood up, his knees cracking. 32 going on 60 some days. Probably. But I'm also going to get you some water, and you're going to drink it, and then you're going to sit on your very expensive couch while I finish my shift. And tomorrow you're going to call your doctor. You can't tell me what to do. I just did. He opened a cabinet, the third one, because rich people apparently needed different cabinets for different types of glasses, and filled a tumbler with water from the fridge. The ice maker sounded like a glacier calving. Drink. Celeste took the glass but didn't drink, just held it, watching him with an expression Ethan couldn't quite read. Calculation, maybe, assessment, the look of someone used to being in control, trying to figure out how to regain it. Why do you care? She asked finally. Ethan thought about that, about all the true answers he could give. Because I couldn't save my wife. Because you remind me of her in the worst way. Because I know what it looks like when someone's drowning and pretending they can breathe. Because I'm standing here, he said instead. And you're in trouble. And I'm not the kind of person who can walk away from that. How noble. Not really. I'm just too tired to be anything else. That got a reaction. Something flickered across Celeste's face. Recognition, maybe. The look of someone who understood exactly what he meant. She drank the water. Ethan finished his shift while Celeste sat on the couch in her living room, her laptop open but mostly ignored, occasionally breaking into coughing fits that she tried unsuccessfully to muffle. He vacuumed, wiped down surfaces, emptied trash cans that were already basically empty because apparently when you were rich enough, you didn't generate normal amounts of garbage. He didn't try to talk to her again, didn't ask questions, just did his job, and every 15 minutes or so, he'd glance over to make sure she was still breathing steadily. Old habit. He used to do the same thing with Emma when she was a baby, and then later with Michelle during those last few months. At 1:47 a.m., he finished. Celeste had fallen asleep sitting up, her laptop tilted dangerously on her knees. Ethan thought about waking her, decided against it, and carefully removed the computer, setting it on the coffee table. She stirred, but didn't wake. In sleep, with her face relaxed, she looked younger, less like the woman on magazine covers and more like an actual person. There were shadows under her eyes that makeup probably hid during the day. Ethan left quietly, pulling the door shut behind him until he heard all 3 locks click into place. The night air hit him when he exited the building, cool and carrying that particular LA smell, smog and jasmine and expensive car exhaust. His truck sat in the employee lot, a 2015 Ford with a check engine light that had been on for 6 months. He didn't start driving immediately, just sat there, hands on the wheel, staring at nothing. His phone buzzed. A text from his sister-in-law, who watched Emma on his night shift nights. She's asleep. Fought me on bedtime, but went down by 9. Left meatloaf in your fridge. Ethan typed back a thank you, then sat there for another minute before starting the engine. The whole drive home, 40 minutes through empty streets because nobody used the freeways at 2 a.m. unless they were either coming from work or going to it, he kept seeing Celeste's face. That moment when she'd coughed into her hand and seen the blood. He'd seen that exact expression on Michelle's face once, the moment she realized she couldn't pretend anymore. Ethan pulled into his apartment complex, Garden Vista Apartments, which had neither gardens nor vistas, and sat in his truck for a while, too tired to get out, but too wired to sleep. His phone buzzed again. He assumed it was another message from Sarah, but the number was unknown. "This is Celeste Vaughn. I got your number from the Made Pro employee directory. What you saw tonight cannot leave this building. I need your word." Ethan stared at the message, typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on, "I'm not going to tell anyone." "But you need to see a doctor." The response came fast. "That's not your concern." "Maybe not, but I'm still saying it." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, "Why did your wife wait so long?" "To see someone." Ethan looked at that question for a long time. At 2:34 a.m. in a parking lot that smelled like old cooking oil from the Chinese place downstairs, with his daughter asleep in an apartment that he could barely afford and a truck that would probably die before he paid it off, he told a near stranger the truth he'd never even told his therapist, because she didn't want to be weak. And by the time she realized that being sick wasn't the same thing as being weak, it was too late to matter. The 3 dots appeared and stayed there for almost a minute. "Good night, Mr. Cole." "Good night, Miss Vaughn." Over the next week, Ethan didn't see Celeste. He showed up for his shifts, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m., and cleaned the penthouse like always. But the place felt different, emptier. He'd catch himself listening for coughing that never came. On the second Monday, he found a note on the kitchen counter. "Working late. Coffee maker broke. Don't worry about it." The coffee maker sat on the counter, looking perfectly functional. Ethan tested it. Worked fine. He found the actual broken machine in the trash, a high-end espresso system that probably cost $3,000. The water reservoir had a crack in it, not from being dropped, from being thrown. There was dried blood on the wall behind where the machine had sat. Ethan cleaned it carefully, then spent the next hour trying not to think about what might have happened. About how hard you'd have to be coughing to lose control like that, to get angry enough to destroy something expensive just because it was there. He left his own note, weighted down with a coffee mug. Fixed the broken one. Left instructions for the new one in the manual. Try to aim for the sink next time. The next shift, the note was gone. In its place, "I don't know what you're talking about." Below that, in different ink, added later, "Thank you." Emma noticed he was distracted. "Daddy, you're not listening." Ethan looked up from his cereal, the generic brand that came in a bag instead of a box, and found his 6-year-old daughter giving him the look, the one that said she was 6 but somehow saw everything. "Sorry, baby. What were you saying?" "I said, Mrs. Chen says I'm the best reader in class. She says I read like a 3rd grader. That's because you're smart like your mom." Was Mom good at reading? These questions came in waves. Some days Emma didn't mention Michelle at all. Other days she collected facts about her mother like trading cards, trying to build a complete picture of someone who was mostly memories and photographs now. The best. She used to read 3 books a week, sometimes 4. Ethan took a drink of coffee, the cheap stuff that came in a can, nothing like what he imagined was in Celeste's penthouse. "She would have been really proud of you. I wish I could remember her better." "Me too, baby." "Do you miss her?" "Every day. Every single day, in ways that had nothing to do with grief and everything to do with logistics. Missing someone to split the bedtime routine with. Missing someone who knew Emma's favorite foods without being told. Missing someone to turn to at 3 a.m. when his daughter had a fever and he couldn't tell if it was serious or just a regular kid thing. "Yeah," he said, "I do." Emma nodded, satisfied with that answer, and went back to her cereal. She'd drawn a picture on her napkin, stick figures holding hands. One tall, one short. Daddy and Emma against the world. Sometimes Ethan felt like he was failing her. Working nights so he could be there for school drop-offs and pickups, but also being exhausted all the time. Never quite having enough money for the things other kids had. Living in an apartment with walls so thin they could hear the neighbors arguing. But then Emma would draw a picture like that, and he'd think maybe he was doing okay. Not great. Not like those parents in the PTA with their organic snacks and their ability to volunteer for every field trip. But okay. Can we go to the park today? Emma asked. After school, yeah. I've got to sleep for a few hours first, though. I know, night shift. She said it like a curse word, the way he sometimes did when he thought she couldn't hear. Maybe when I'm older you can have a day job. Maybe. And maybe we can get a bigger apartment. Maybe. And maybe we can get a dog. Let's start with the park. Emma grinned. She had Michelle's smile. Same slightly crooked front tooth, same way her whole face lit up. Ethan's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. I'm traveling for work this week. The penthouse will be empty. You can skip Friday's shift if you want, if not unknown. He deleted Celeste's number after that first night, some instinct telling him to maintain distance. But he recognized the area code. I'll still come. Part of the contract. The contract is with MaidPro, not me personally. You have my permission to skip it. I'll still come. 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times. Finally, why? Ethan looked at that question while Emma chattered about something her friend Sophia had said at recess. Why would he go clean an empty apartment when he could have the night off? When he could actually sleep through the night for once? Because that's the job. The response came back immediately. You're an odd man, Mr. Cole. So I've been told. Friday night, the penthouse was dark and silent in a different way than usual. Not the silence of someone trying to be quiet, but the actual absence of another person. Ethan went through his routine anyway, vacuumed carpets that didn't have footprints, wiped down counters that hadn't been used, dusted furniture that wasn't dusty. He was emptying the bathroom trash when he found it. A receipt, crumpled like someone had tried to throw it away and missed, from a pharmacy. For nicotine patches. Ethan stood there holding that receipt for a long time. Then he went to the kitchen and started actually looking. Not cleaning, looking. He checked the usual spots first. Under the sink, behind the microwave, inside the vents. Nothing. Then he remembered the balcony. The penthouse had 2 balconies, one off the living room, one off the master bedroom. Both were pristine, furnished with weather-resistant furniture that probably cost more than Emma's college fund would ever be. The kind of balconies that appeared in architectural magazines. Ethan checked the living room one first. Nothing unusual, just expensive outdoor furniture and a view that made his stomach drop. The bedroom balcony was different. It faced east, away from the main view, looking toward downtown instead of the ocean. The furniture here looked less used. There was a potted plant that was definitely dead. And in the corner, hidden behind a decorative screen, there was a small outdoor storage box. Ethan opened it. Inside were approximately 30 cigarette butts, carefully collected in a Ziploc bag. He sat down on the balcony floor, his back against the railing, and stared at that bag. Celeste Vaughn smoked, not used to smoke, not occasionally. The butts were recent. He could tell by the color, by the smell, and there were fresh ashes in the bottom of the box that the bag hadn't captured. America's youngest female tech CEO, the woman who gave TED Talks about discipline and optimization, who posted Instagram photos of her morning runs and her AKE bowls and her meditation practice. She was hiding out here in the middle of the night, smoking cigarettes and collecting the evidence like a teenager afraid of getting caught. Ethan thought about Michelle, about the years of smoking she'd hidden from him, sneaking cigarettes during work breaks, chewing gum to cover the smell. He'd found out after the diagnosis, going through her purse, looking for her insurance card, a pack of Marlboros half empty. I quit, she'd said when he confronted her. That's old, from before. But it wasn't. He'd found the receipts later after she died. Years of buying cigarettes, hiding them, lying about them. And it had killed her anyway. Ethan pulled out his phone and took a picture of the storage box. Then he carefully closed it, put everything back exactly as he'd found it, and finished his shift. At 1:30 a.m., sitting in his truck in the employee parking lot, he sent the photo to Celeste. I found this. We need to talk. 3 dots appeared immediately, then disappeared. then appeared again. This time, they stayed there for almost 5 minutes before a response came through. How dare you go through my personal belongings? I was doing my job. That's not your job. That's violating my privacy. Your privacy is killing you. You don't know anything about me. I know you're smoking yourself to death and lying about it. I know you're coughing up blood and pretending it's stress. I know you're buying nicotine patches and not using them because the empty box is still in your bathroom trash. The 3 dots disappeared. Ethan waited, counting the seconds. He got to 97 before the response came. I'm firing you. You can't. You don't employ me. I'll call MaidPro and tell them you've been harassing me. Go ahead. I'll tell them why. You signed an NDA. Sue me. I don't have $50,000. I don't have $500 most months. You'd be trying to get blood from a stone. Another long pause. Then, what do you want? Ethan looked at that question, at the fear and anger behind it, at this woman who had everything except the one thing that actually mattered. I want you to stop lying. To me, to yourself, to your doctors. I want you to admit you have a problem and get help before it's too late. Or what? Or nothing. I'm not blackmailing you, I'm just telling you the truth because somebody needs to, and apparently nobody else in your life will. The 3 dots appeared and disappeared 3 more times. Then, I can't. 2 words, no explanation, just that. Ethan typed, why not? The response took almost 10 minutes. Because if I admit I'm weak, then everything falls apart. The board, the investors, the acquisition, everything I've built. It all depends on people believing I'm in control, that I have my shit together, that I'm not the kind of person who does stupid, self-destructive things. You're not weak, you're sick. Those aren't the same thing. In my world, they are. Ethan stared at his phone. At this admission from a woman who probably made more in a day than he made in a year. A woman who was so terrified of appearing human that she'd rather die than ask for help. My wife said something similar, he typed. She said she didn't want people to pity her, didn't want to be the sick one, so she kept working, kept pretending, kept telling everyone she was fine until she literally couldn't anymore. And you know what happened? People pitied her anyway. But by then, it was too late for their pity to matter. No response. Ethan sat there in his truck, watching the screen until his phone dimmed from inactivity. Then, just as he was about to give up and drive home, I'm scared. 2 more words. But these ones felt heavier. I know, Ethan typed back. I would be too. I don't know how to stop. You start by telling someone who can help. A doctor, a therapist, someone. I tried. 3 years ago, the patches, the gum. I lasted 2 weeks before I bought another pack. Then you try again. What if I can't? Ethan thought about all the true answers to that question. About Michelle in her hospital bed, about being 32 and alone, about explaining to a 3-year-old why mommy wasn't coming home. Then you keep trying until you can, or you don't, and you die. Those are pretty much your options. You're not very comforting. I'm not trying to comfort you. I'm trying to keep you alive. Another pause. Then, when do you work next? Monday. I'll be there. Old. Monday night, Celeste was waiting in the living room when Ethan arrived. She looked different than she had that first night on the kitchen floor. Put together. Hair and makeup perfect. Wearing the kind of casual clothes that only looked casual because they cost enough to make expensive look effortless. But her hands were shaking. I called my doctor, she said without preamble. I have an appointment Thursday. They wanted to see me sooner, but I have the Meridian pitch on Wednesday, and I can't do this before that. Okay. Okay? That's it? No lecture about waiting? Would a lecture change anything? No? Then okay. Ethan set down his cleaning supplies. How long since your last cigarette? 53 hours. She said it like someone counting days sober. Specific. Measured. The kind of number you checked obsessively. How are you feeling? Like I want to crawl out of my own skin. Like I can't think straight. Like I might actually murder someone if they look at me wrong. She laughed, but it sounded brittle. I snapped at my assistant today because she brought me regular coffee instead of decaf. Made her cry. She's been with me for 4 years and I made her cry over coffee. Did you apologize? I gave her the rest of the week off. Paid. That's not the same thing. I know. Celeste pulled her knees up to her chest, suddenly looking much younger than 30. I don't know how to do this. How to be this, weak and needy and falling apart. You're not falling apart. You're withdrawing from a chemical addiction. It's physical, not personal. In my world, everything is personal. Ethan started to respond, then stopped. Started again. Can I tell you something? Apparently you're going to whether I want you to or not. Fair point. He sat down in the chair across from her, some designer thing that looked like modern art and felt like sitting on a very expensive rock. After Michelle died, I spent about 6 months thinking I was doing fine. I had Emma to take care of, so I just did. Got up, made breakfast, dropped her at daycare, worked, picked her up, made dinner, bedtime, repeat. I was functioning. What happened after 6 months? I had a panic attack in the frozen food aisle at Ralph's. Just completely lost it. Couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Ended up sitting on the floor between the ice cream and the frozen dinners while some teenager asked if I needed them to call 911. Ethan smiled without humor. Emma thought it was hilarious. She was 3. To her, Daddy sitting on the floor at the store was just Daddy being silly. What did you do? I got up, finished shopping, took Emma home, put her to bed, and then I called a therapist because I realized that functioning and being okay are 2 completely different things. Celeste was quiet for a moment. Did therapy help? Eventually. Not right away. For a while it just made things worse because I had to actually feel everything I'd been avoiding. But yeah, eventually. I don't have time for eventually. Nobody does. We make time anyway. Celeste uncurled from the couch and walked to the windows. Los Angeles glittered below her like she owned it. Maybe she did, a little bit. I started smoking in college, she said quietly. Stress relief during finals. Everyone did it. It was just a thing. I'd quit after graduation, I told myself. Then it was after I got my first real job. Then after the promotion. Then after the next one. There was always a reason to wait. And now? Now I'm 30 years old, running a company worth $750 million, and I can't go 4 hours without nicotine without wanting to scream. She pressed her forehead against the glass. I'm pathetic. You're human. In my position, those are the same thing. Ethan stood up, walked over to stand beside her. Not too close, just close enough that she'd know she wasn't alone. You want to know what I think? He asked. Not particularly, but you'll tell me anyway. I think you're scared that if people see you struggling, they'll lose respect for you. And maybe some will. Maybe your board would freak out, or investors would get nervous, or whatever. But I also think you're underestimating people. Most folks respect honesty more than perfection. That's naive. Maybe. But I'd rather be naive and alive than realistic and dead. Celeste turned to look at him. Really look at him, like she was trying to figure out what kind of person said things like that. Why do you care? She asked. Really, you barely know me. I know enough. That's not an answer. Ethan thought about how to explain it, about the guilt that still woke him up some nights, the what-ifs that never really went away. What if he'd pushed Michelle harder to see a doctor? What if he'd noticed sooner? What if he'd been less understanding of her excuses and more insistent on the truth? Because I didn't save my wife, he said finally, and I can't save you either. But maybe I can stand here and tell you the truth loud enough that you can't ignore it. And maybe that's enough. That's a lot of pressure to put on yourself. Yeah, well, it's either that or go home and not sleep while I worry about whether you're going to be alive next week. This seems more productive. Almost laughter flickered across Celeste's face. You're very strange. So I've been told. They stood there for a moment, looking out at the city. Then Celeste's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her expression shifted into something harder. I need to take this. I'll just... Ethan gestured vaguely at his cleaning supplies. Yeah. He went back to work, trying not to listen to her conversation, but hearing it anyway because the penthouse was designed for aesthetics, not privacy. No, the projections are solid. Because I've run the numbers myself, David. I don't care what Hendricks thinks. The acquisition makes sense. Yes, I'm sure. Thursday. I'm meeting with them Thursday. No, I'm fine, just tired. I said, I'm fine. The call went on for 20 minutes. By the end of it, Celeste's voice had gone sharp and cold, all the vulnerability from earlier locked away. When she hung up, she just stood there for a minute, staring at her phone. Then she walked to the balcony, slid open the door, and stepped outside. Ethan watched through the window as she pulled out a pack of cigarettes. Where had she been hiding those? And stared at it. She stood there for almost 5 minutes, just holding the pack. Then she walked back inside, threw it in the kitchen trash, and went to her bedroom without a word. Ethan finished his shift. Before he left, he took the cigarettes out of the trash and put them in his own bag. When he got to his truck, he texted her. 53 hours is good. 54 is better. The response came 10 minutes later. You took my cigarettes. Yep, that's theft. Sue me. Add it to the tab. I hate you. No, you don't. You hate that I'm right. 3 dots appeared and disappeared. Then, same thing. Ethan smiled despite himself. Get some sleep, Ms. Vaughn. Stop calling me that. It's weird now. What should I call you? Celeste. Just Celeste. Okay. Get some sleep, Celeste. Good night, Ethan. It was the first time she'd used his first name. He drove home through empty streets, past closed storefronts and 24-hour diners, past people living lives he'd never understand and people living lives exactly like his. The city was full of people fighting battles nobody else could see. At least Celeste's battle had a witness now. That had to count for something. The doctor's appointment was scheduled for Thursday at 2 p.m., but by Wednesday morning, Celeste was already unraveling. Ethan knew because she called him at 6 in the morning, which was exactly 2 hours after he'd gotten home from his shift and approximately 45 minutes after he'd finally fallen asleep. I can't do this, she said when he answered. No hello, no apology for the hour, just panic, raw and immediate. Ethan sat up in bed, trying to shake off the fog. Can't do what? The pitch, the meeting, any of it. I can't think straight. I can't focus. I tried to run the presentation twice last night, and I kept losing my place. Do you know what happens if I fuck up this acquisition? Do you have any concept of how many people are depending on... Celeste, stop. She stopped. He could hear her breathing on the other end, quick and shallow. How long since you slept? He asked. I don't know. Tuesday? Maybe Monday night. I've been working. That's not working. That's avoiding sleep because sleep means withdrawal symptoms get worse. Silence. Then, quietly, you don't know what you're talking about. I had insomnia for 8 months after Michelle died. I know exactly what I'm talking about. Ethan rubbed his eyes, looked at the clock. Emma would be up in an hour. When's the pitch? Today, 1 p.m. And the doctor? Tomorrow. Can you move it up? I already told you I can't do this before. I know what you told me. I'm asking if you physically can move the appointment. Another pause. He heard typing in the background. They have an opening at 4 today, after the pitch. Take it. Ethan, take it. Do your pitch. Then go to the doctor. Don't give yourself time to talk yourself out of it. More typing. Then a long exhale. Okay, fine. 4 o'clock. Good. Now go take a shower. Cold water. It'll help you focus. I don't need, Celeste. What? Cold shower. Now. Then eat something. Not coffee. Actual food. Then practice your pitch one more time and stop obsessing. You're very bossy for a janitor. And you're very difficult for someone who called me for help. He heard something that might have been a laugh, might have been a sob. Hard to tell. Thank you, she said quietly. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when you actually go to the appointment. She hung up without saying goodbye. Ethan lay back down, knowing he wouldn't fall asleep again, but trying anyway. Beside him, his phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Emma's asking if she can have a sleepover at Sophia's house Friday. I told her I'd ask you. He stared at that message, trying to remember what day Friday was, what shift he had, whether he could logistically make that work. Yeah, okay. I'll pick her up Saturday morning. You sure? You look exhausted lately. I'm fine. That's what you always say. Ethan didn't respond to that, mostly because Sarah was right, and they both knew it. He got up, made coffee, and started getting ready for the day. Emma appeared at 6:45, already dressed because she was going through a phase where she insisted on picking her own outfits, which meant she currently looked like a rainbow had a fight with a thrift store. Morning, baby. Morning, Daddy. Can I have waffles? We're out of waffles. How about cereal? Emma made a face that suggested cereal was a personal betrayal, but she got the box down anyway. She was good at adapting, had to be, with the life they lived. Daddy, why do you look so tired? Just didn't sleep well. Is it because of your night job? Partly. When I grow up, I'm only having day jobs. Night jobs are dumb. That's probably smart. Emma poured her cereal with the intense concentration of someone performing surgery, getting more on the table than in the bowl. Ethan cleaned it up without comment. Pick your battles. His phone buzzed again. This time it was a number he didn't recognize, but the message made it clear who it was. I'm eating. Happy now? What are you eating? Yogurt and granola. It's disgusting. When's the last time you ate breakfast? I don't know. I usually just have coffee. That's not breakfast. That's liquid anxiety. I'm beginning to see why your wife found you annoying. Ethan stared at that message for a long moment. It was cruel, probably intentional. Celeste lashing out because she was scared and he was there. She did, he typed back, frequently, especially when I was right. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. I'm sorry, that was out of line. Yes, it was. I'm not good at this. At being vulnerable. At accepting help. At any of it. I noticed. I'm trying. I know. Emma was watching him with that too knowing expression she got sometimes. Who are you texting? Someone from work. You smile different when you text them. I'm not smiling. Yes, you are. It's your, this person is annoying, but I like them anyway smile. You used to make that face at Mommy. Ethan's chest tightened. Finish your cereal. We need to leave in 10 minutes. Emma went back to eating, but she kept glancing at him with a look that said this conversation wasn't over, just postponed. At school drop-off, Emma hugged him harder than usual. Love you, Daddy. Love you too, baby. Don't be too tired today, okay? I'll try. She ran off to join her friends, and Ethan stood there for a moment watching her. 6 years old and already worrying about him. That wasn't right. That wasn't how it was supposed to work. His phone buzzed. The pitch went well. I think. It's hard to tell. Everyone kept smiling, but that doesn't mean anything in business. That's good. I threw up twice beforehand. From nerves or withdrawal? Both probably. I couldn't tell. Did you go to the appointment? The 3 dots appeared and stayed there for almost 3 minutes. I'm in the waiting room now. Good. Proud of you. Don't be proud yet. I might still leave. You won't. How do you know? Because you called me at 6 in the morning. Because you're texting me from the waiting room. Because you're scared, but you're here anyway. That's not the behavior of someone who's going to run. Another long pause. What if they find something bad? Ethan sat in his truck in the school parking lot, watching other parents drive away to jobs and lives that probably made sense. He thought about all the comforting lies he could tell, that everything would be fine, that she was probably okay, that she was young and healthy, and this was all just precautionary. Then you deal with it, he typed. But at least you'll know. And knowing is better than guessing, is it? It wasn't with Michelle. She spent so long guessing, so long being scared to know, that by the time we knew for sure, there was nothing left to do except wait. So yeah, knowing is better. I'm scared. I know. Be scared anyway. The next text came an hour later. They're running tests. Blood work, chest x-ray, CT scan scheduled for next week. The doctor didn't like what he heard when he listened to my lungs. Ethan's stomach dropped. He'd been in class at the community college. Business management. Because maybe someday he'd have a job that paid better than cleaning penthouses. And the text had come through right in the middle of a lecture about profit margins. What did he say exactly? That there's scarring. That smoking for 12 years at a pack a day does damage that doesn't just disappear. That I'm lucky I came in when I did, because if I'd waited another year, we might be having a very different conversation. But you didn't wait another year. Only because you blackmailed me with photographic evidence. I prefer to think of it as aggressive caring. You're insane. Probably. What happens now? I wait for test results. Stop smoking. Come back in 2 weeks for the CT scan. He gave me a prescription for something to help with the cravings, and a referral to a therapist who specializes in addiction. Are you going to go? To the therapist? I don't know. Maybe. Probably not. I don't have time for... Celeste. What? You have time. You just don't want to make time. There's a difference. Easy for you to say. You're not running a company. No, I'm working 2 jobs and raising a kid alone. Different kind of busy, but still busy. And I still make time for therapy because the alternative is falling apart. And I can't afford to fall apart. Another long pause. Ethan was starting to recognize what those pauses meant. She was angry, or hurt, or both. Processing emotions she wasn't used to having, at least not where anyone could see them. I need to go. Board meeting. Okay, text me later. Why? Because I'm going to worry if you don't. That's not your job. Lots of things aren't my job. I do them anyway. She didn't respond to that, but 2 hours later he got a text. Still alive, still not smoking, still hate everything. Progress. That night Ethan showed up for his shift expecting the penthouse to be empty. Celeste had said something about a dinner meeting with investors. But when the elevator opened, the lights were on, and he could hear music playing softly from inside. Jazz. Something old and sad. He found her in the living room, sitting on the floor with her back against the couch, surrounded by papers. Her laptop was open in front of her, but the screen had gone dark from inactivity. She looked up when he came in. Her eyes were red. Bad day? He asked. The worst. She gestured at the papers. These are the test results. They emailed them to me. I wasn't supposed to get them until the follow-up appointment, but apparently their patient portal doesn't care about timing. Ethan set down his cleaning supplies and sat on the floor across from her. What do they say? A lot of medical jargon I don't understand, but the summary is that I have moderate COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, at 30, because I spent the last 12 years killing myself 1 cigarette at a time. She laughed, but it came out wrong. I built $1 billion company, but I couldn't stop doing the one thing that was destroying me. COPD isn't a death sentence. It's not curable either. The damage is done. Best case scenario, I manage it for the rest of my life. Worst case, she trailed off, staring at the papers. Worst case, you keep smoking and make it worse, which you're not doing. How do you know? Maybe I'm just telling you what you want to hear. Maybe the second you leave, I go out to that balcony and... Are you? Celeste met his eyes, held his gaze for a long moment. No, but I want to. Every minute of every day I want to. That's normal. It doesn't feel normal. It feels like I'm crawling out of my own skin. Ethan thought about the early days after Michelle died, the way grief had felt like something physical, something he could choke on. How long now? 6 days, 4 hours, 23 minutes. That's good. It's awful. It's both. She smiled despite herself, small and bitter, but still a smile. You're annoyingly persistent, you know that? So I've been told. Your wife must have been a saint. She really wasn't. She was stubborn and opinionated, and she burned everything she tried to cook. But she was mine, and I loved her, and I'd give anything to have one more day with her, even if she spent that whole day telling me I was annoying. Celeste was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, Do you ever stop missing them? No. It just becomes part of the background instead of the main event, like tinnitus. Always there, but you learn to function around it. That sounds exhausting. It is, but the alternative is worse. They sat there in silence while the jazz played and the city glittered below them. After a while, Celeste started gathering up the papers, organizing them into neat stacks with the precision of someone who needed control over something, anything. I canceled the dinner meeting, she said. Told them I had a migraine. My assistant was so shocked she actually asked if I needed her to call a doctor. I've apparently never canceled anything in the 4 years she's worked for me. Never? Not once. I've given presentations with the flu, run board meetings after pulling all-nighters, flew to Singapore for a conference 12 hours after having my wisdom teeth removed. She paused. I'm starting to think I might have a problem with boundaries. You think? Shut up. But there was no heat in it. The point is, I canceled, and the world didn't end. The company didn't collapse. The investors didn't pull out. Nothing catastrophic happened. How did that feel? Terrifying. And then, after the terror passed, kind of, okay, like maybe I'm not as essential as I thought. Like maybe things can function without me micromanaging every detail. That's called delegation. Most CEOs consider it a valuable skill. I'm not most CEOs. I noticed. Celeste looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Why are you here, Ethan? And don't say it's your job. You could have called in sick. You could have asked for a different client. You could have done a dozen things that didn't involve sitting on my floor at midnight listening to me have an existential crisis. Ethan thought about how to answer that, about all the complicated reasons that didn't have simple explanations. Because I know what it's like to watch someone die who didn't have to, he said finally. And I know what it's like to wish I'd done more, said more, pushed harder. And maybe this is selfish, but I don't want to carry that guilt twice. So I'm here, and I'm going to keep being here until you either tell me to leave or prove that you don't need me to stay. What if I never prove that? Then I guess we'll figure it out as we go. Celeste's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, frowned, typed something quickly, then set it face down on the floor. My mother, she said, asking if I'm coming to her charity gala next month. I haven't been to one of her events in 3 years. We don't really talk anymore. Why not? Because she wanted me to marry well and look pretty and use my business degree to manage my future husband's investments. And I wanted to build my own company and make my own money and not need anyone's permission to exist. We disagreed fundamentally about what my life should look like. Does she know about the COPD? She doesn't know about anything. As far as she's concerned, I'm exactly what I appear to be in magazines. Successful. Together. Perfect. Celeste picked up one of the test result pages, stared at it. I don't know how to tell her I'm not. Maybe you don't have to. Not yet, anyway. Or maybe that's part of the problem. Maybe spending my whole life hiding anything that makes me look weak is exactly what got me here. Ethan didn't have an answer for that. It was probably true, but saying so felt cruel. They talked for another hour while Ethan half-heartedly cleaned around her. She told him about the acquisition deal, about the pressure from the board, about the investor who kept implying she was too young to handle this level of responsibility. He told her about Emma's school, about community college classes, about the weird satisfaction of cleaning other people's spaces and making them orderly. At some point, Celeste's head started drooping. When's the last time you slept? Ethan asked. I told you. Monday. Or Tuesday. You need to sleep. I can't. Every time I lie down, I start thinking about the test results, about what this means, about everything I need to do tomorrow. My brain won't shut off. Have you tried not lying down? She blinked at him. That's the opposite of helpful. I'm serious. When Emma can't sleep, sometimes I let her fall asleep on the couch watching TV. Something about the ambient noise and the lack of pressure helps. Maybe it would work for you too. I'm not 6 years old. No, but you're exhausted and desperate. So maybe try it. Celeste looked skeptical, but she grabbed a blanket from the bedroom and settled onto the couch. Ethan turned on the TV, some nature documentary about ocean life, and went back to cleaning, working quietly in the kitchen while David Attenborough narrated something about coral reefs. 20 minutes later, he checked on her. She was asleep, curled up under the blanket with her phone still clutched in one hand. Ethan carefully extracted the phone, plugged it in to charge, and turned off the TV. Then he finished his shift in near silence, trying not to wake her. Before he left, he sent her a text from his own phone, knowing she'd see it when she woke up. Sleep is good. Do it more often. He drove home thinking about how strange his life had become. A month ago, Celeste Vaughn had been just a name on a contract, someone whose space he cleaned but never really thought about. Now she was texting him at 6 in the morning and falling asleep on her couch while he vacuumed. His phone buzzed around 4 a.m. He was awake, lying in bed and trying to convince his brain to shut down. I slept for 5 hours. 5 hours. I haven't slept that long in weeks. What kind of witchcraft is this? It's called being so exhausted your body gives up fighting. Whatever it is, I feel almost human. Good. Now go back to sleep. Can't. Too awake now. Also too hungry. When did I last eat? Yesterday. Yogurt and granola. Right. I should probably eat more than once a day. Yes. You should. Are you awake because of work or because you can't sleep? Can't sleep. Normal for me. The insomnia from after your wife died? Yeah. Does it ever get better? Sometimes. When I'm exhausted enough or distracted enough. But mostly it just is what it is. That sounds lonely. Ethan stared at that message. Nobody had ever called his insomnia lonely before. Frustrating, yes. Inconvenient, definitely. But lonely was exactly right. It is, he typed back. But it's also quiet. And sometimes quiet is good. I don't know how to do quiet. My brain is always running, always planning the next thing, solving the next problem, anticipating the next crisis. Maybe that's something you could work on. With the therapist? Maybe. If I actually go? You'll go. You sound very sure of that, because you're not the kind of person who starts something and doesn't finish it. You're scared, but you're not a quitter. How do you know? You barely know me. I know you've been awake for 10 minutes and you're already talking about work instead of eating breakfast. I know you canceled a dinner meeting for the first time in 4 years, and it terrified you. I know you're counting every hour you don't smoke like they're victories in a war. That's not quitter behavior. The 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times. Thank you, she said finally, for not giving up on me even when I'm trying to give up on myself. Anytime. I mean it. I don't have a lot of people who see me. The real me. Not the magazine cover version. You have at least one. Yeah. A night janitor who steals my cigarettes and bullies me into going to the doctor. That's me. Professional bully. The worst kind. Ethan smiled in the darkness of his bedroom. Outside, the city was starting to wake up. Traffic sounds, birds, the particular quality of light that meant dawn was close. I should try to sleep, Celeste texted. Big day tomorrow. Conference call with Tokyo at 7 a.m. Good luck. Thanks. And Ethan? Yeah? I'm glad you found my cigarettes. Me too. Over the next week, they fell into a rhythm that wasn't quite friendship, but wasn't quite anything else either. Ethan would show up for his shifts, and sometimes Celeste would be there, working late or unable to sleep, and they'd talk. About nothing important, about everything important, about Emma's school play and Celeste's board meetings and the million small moments that made up their very different lives. She was still counting hours without smoking. 9 days, 12 days, 2 weeks. The cravings were getting worse, she said. Not better. The doctor had warned her about that. The physical withdrawal peaked around 2 weeks, and she was right in the middle of it. I keep dreaming about cigarettes, she told him one night, sitting at her kitchen counter while Ethan cleaned the already spotless stove. Last night I dreamed I was at a board meeting and everyone was smoking except me, and I just kept asking for a cigarette, but nobody would give me one. And I woke up actually angry about it. That's normal. It's exhausting. I'm exhausted. I'm tired of thinking about this all the time, tired of white-knuckling through every day, tired of wanting something I know will kill me. I know. Do you? Really? Ethan turned to look at her. She looked wrecked. Designer clothes and perfect makeup couldn't hide the shadows under her eyes, the tightness in her jaw. The way her hands kept moving restlessly, searching for something to hold. After Michelle died, I spent about 8 months drunk, he said quietly. Not falling down drunk, just constant low-level drunk. Enough to take the edge off. Enough to make Emma's bedtime stories not feel like they were being told by someone who wanted to disappear. Celeste went very still. What happened after 8 months? I woke up one morning and couldn't remember Emma's bedtime routine from the night before. Couldn't remember if I'd brushed her teeth or read her a story or just put her to bed and walked away. And I realized I was so focused on making my own pain manageable that I was failing the one person who needed me most. So you stopped drinking. Cold turkey. Worst 3 weeks of my life. Shaking, sweating, wanting to crawl out of my own skin. Sarah had to take Emma for a while because I couldn't trust myself to be a functional parent. Did it get better? Eventually. Not right away. But yeah. One day I woke up and the first thing I thought about wasn't alcohol. It was Emma's school permission slip, and I knew I'd made it through. Celeste was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I've never told anyone this, but sometimes I think about what would happen if I just stopped. If I closed my laptop and walked away from all of it. The company, the board, the constant pressure to be perfect. I think about getting on a plane and flying somewhere nobody knows my name and just existing as a person, not as a brand, Why don't you? Because I spent 12 years building this. Because thousands of people have jobs because of what I created. Because my entire identity is wrapped up in being Celeste Vaughn, CEO. Without that, I don't know who I am. Maybe that's something worth finding out. Or maybe it's terrifying. It's probably both. She smiled at that, small and sad and real. You have this way of making impossible things sound reasonable. It's a gift. His phone buzzed, a text from Sarah. Emma's asking when you're going to be home. She misses you. Guilt hit him hard and immediate. He'd been spending so much time here, so much mental energy on Celeste's crisis, that he'd been checked out at home, going through the motions with Emma, but not really present. I need to go, he said abruptly. Celeste looked surprised. It's only 1. You usually stay until 2. Yeah, but I need to be home. She studied his face and he watched her clock what was happening, that he'd been neglecting his own life to manage hers. Go, she said. I'm fine. I'll be fine. You sure? Ethan, go be with your daughter. I'll still be a mess tomorrow. The mess isn't going anywhere. He left feeling off balance, drove home faster than he should have, found Emma still awake in Sarah's living room, watching cartoons in her pajamas. Daddy! She launched herself at him, and Ethan caught her, held her tight. Hey, baby, you should be asleep. I wanted to wait for you. I'm here now. Sarah appeared in the doorway, gave him a look that said they'd be having a conversation later, but said only, I'll see you both tomorrow. Ethan carried Emma to the truck, buckled her in, drove the 3 blocks to their apartment. Daddy, are you sad? Emma asked as he was tucking her into bed. No, baby. Why? You seem sad, like when Mommy first went away. Ethan's chest tightened. I'm not sad, just tired. Is it because of work? Partly. I wish you didn't have to work so much. Me too. Emma was quiet for a moment, then she said, Sophia's daddy is home every night. They eat dinner together and everything. It shouldn't have hurt. It was just a fact. A 6-year-old's observation about how other families worked, but it landed like a punch anyway. I know, baby. I'm sorry. It's okay. Aunt Sarah says you're doing your best. I am. I promise I am. I know. Emma yawned, already half asleep. I love you, Daddy. Love you too, more than anything. He stayed there until her breathing evened out, then went to his own room and stared at the ceiling for 3 hours before finally giving up on sleep. His phone buzzed around 3 a.m. I bought cigarettes. I'm sitting on my balcony with a full pack and I've been staring at it for an hour. I can't open it, but I can't throw it away either. Ethan called her instead of texting back. She answered on the first ring. Don't, he said. I wasn't going to. But her voice shook. I just needed someone to know that I'm struggling, that it's hard, that I'm not as strong as I pretend to be. Strength isn't not struggling. It's struggling and asking for help anyway. Then I'm asking. Help me throw these away. I can't. I'm at home with Emma. I know. I'm not asking you to come here. I'm just asking you to stay on the phone while I do it myself. So Ethan lay in his bed in his crappy apartment with the thin walls and listened to Celeste Vaughn, CEO, worth more money than he'd see in 3 lifetimes, throw away a pack of cigarettes. He heard the splash when they hit the pool 68 floors below. There, she said, gone. Good. 15 days. I made it 15 days and I almost threw it away over one bad night. But you didn't. Only because you answered your phone. Then I'm glad I did. They stayed on the line for another hour, not really talking, just existing in the same space across miles and worlds of difference. When Celeste finally said goodnight, Ethan felt something shift, something that had been heavy becoming just slightly less so. Maybe they were both going to be okay. Or maybe they'd both just keep struggling, together, until struggling didn't feel quite so much like drowning. Either way, they weren't doing it alone anymore. And that had to count for something. The collapse happened on a Tuesday, 3 weeks and 2 days after Celeste's last cigarette. Ethan was in the middle of his community college marketing class when his phone started buzzing in his pocket. He ignored it the first time, the second time. By the third time, the professor was giving him a look, and the other students were starting to notice. He checked the screen. 12 missed calls from an unknown number. 3 voicemails. and a text from building security at Meridian Towers. Medical emergency, penthouse 68. Patient asking for you. Please call. Ethan's stomach dropped through the floor. He grabbed his bag and bolted from the classroom without explanation, calling the number back as he ran through the hallway. A security guard answered on the first ring. "This is Ethan Cole." "What happened?" "Mr. Cole, your friend had some kind of attack in the lobby. Couldn't breathe. We called paramedics, but she's refusing to go to the hospital. She keeps saying your name." "Is she okay?" "She's conscious, breathing, but she looks real bad, man. Real bad." Ethan was already in his truck, engine starting before the guard finished talking. "I'm 20 minutes away. Don't let her leave. Don't let her go anywhere alone." "She's not going anywhere, can barely stand up." The drive took 15 minutes because Ethan ran 2 red lights and may have exceeded the speed limit by a margin that would have cost him his license if he'd been caught. He didn't care. All he could think about was Celeste on her kitchen floor, blood on her hand, that look of terror in her eyes. He found her in the lobby, sitting in one of those expensive armchairs that were more art than furniture, paramedics packing up their equipment while she waved them away. Her face was the color of old newspaper. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold her phone. "Celeste." She looked up, and the relief that crossed her face was so naked it hurt to see. "Ethan, I told them. I told them you were coming." He turned to the paramedics. "What happened?" The older one, a woman with gray hair and kind eyes, said, "Severe coughing fit followed by what appears to be a panic attack. Her oxygen levels are low but stable. We strongly recommend she go to the ER for evaluation." "I'm not going to the hospital," Celeste said. Her voice came out raspy and weak. "I'm fine. I just need to go upstairs and rest." "Ma'am, you collapsed in your building lobby. That's not fine." "I didn't collapse. I sat down. There's a difference." The paramedic looked at Ethan with an expression that said she'd seen this before. Stubborn patients who'd argue with a heart attack. "We can't force her to go, but she shouldn't be alone." "She won't be," Ethan said. "I'll stay with her." They made Celeste sign a refusal of treatment form, gave Ethan a list of warning signs to watch for, and left looking deeply unsatisfied with the situation. The building security guards hovered nearby, clearly uncomfortable with having their most high-profile resident nearly die in their lobby. "Can you stand?" Ethan asked quietly. "Of course I can stand. I'm not an invalid." She tried to prove it by standing up too quickly, and immediately her knees buckled. Ethan caught her before she went down, one arm around her waist, taking most of her weight. "Okay, new plan. We're taking the elevator, and you're not arguing. I can walk." "Celeste, shut up." She shut up. Maybe because she was too tired to fight, or maybe because she knew he was right. Either way, she leaned against him in the elevator, and Ethan tried not to think about how fragile she felt, how someone who appeared so powerful in boardrooms could feel this breakable. The elevator ride to the 68th floor felt like it took hours. Celeste's breathing was still rough, each inhale sounding like it cost her something. Her whole body was trembling. "What triggered it?" Ethan asked. "Conference call with the board. They were asking questions about my availability, about whether I could handle the expanded responsibilities after the acquisition. And David, he's the chairman, he made this comment about how I seem distracted lately, asked if everything was all right." "What did you say?" "I said I was fine, and then I couldn't stop coughing, and they could all hear it, 20 people on a video call watching me fall apart." Her voice cracked. "I muted myself and tried to get it under control, but it just kept getting worse. I couldn't breathe. I thought I was dying." The elevator doors opened. Ethan half carried her down the hall to her door, waited while she fumbled with her keys, then got her inside and onto the couch. "I'm calling your doctor," he said. "Don't, please. I can't deal with doctors right now." "You just had a medical emergency." "I had a panic attack. That's different." "The paramedic said your oxygen levels were low." "They're always low. That's what COPD means, chronically low oxygen. It's not an emergency. It's just my life now." Ethan knelt down in front of her, forcing her to meet his eyes. "Talk to me. What's really going on?" Celeste's face did something complicated, like she was trying to hold together a dam that was already breaking. "I can't do this anymore. The lying, the pretending, sitting in board meetings acting like I'm in control when I feel like I'm drowning. I'm supposed to be running this company through the biggest acquisition in its history, and I can barely make it through a conference call without collapsing. So tell them. Tell them what? That their CEO has COPD because she was too weak to quit smoking? That I've been hiding a serious health condition while making major business decisions? They'd force me out. The board would vote no confidence. The acquisition would fall apart. Everything I've built would be gone. Or they'd support you. You don't know these people. You don't know how business works. Weakness gets you eaten alive. Ethan sat back on his heels. Michelle said something similar once. She said if her colleagues at the law firm knew she was sick, they'd start pushing her out, start giving her cases to other attorneys, start treating her like she was already gone. So she kept working, kept showing up, kept pretending right up until the day she physically couldn't anymore. What happened? She collapsed during a deposition, woke up in the hospital with stage 3 lung cancer and 3 partners from her firm sitting in the waiting room. You know what they did? They organized a meal train, set up a legal defense fund for her medical bills, covered her cases so she could focus on treatment. Turns out the weakness she was so afraid of showing made her more human to them, not less. That's a nice story. But this isn't a law firm. This is tech. This is venture capital and shareholders and people who will replace me the second they think I can't perform. Maybe, or maybe you're so scared of that possibility that you're not giving anyone a chance to prove you wrong. Celeste closed her eyes. She looked exhausted in a way that went beyond physical. I'm so tired, Ethan. I'm tired of fighting, tired of pretending, tired of being strong. Then stop. I can't. Yes, you can. You can stop right now. Call your assistant. Cancel your meetings for the rest of the week. Go to the doctor. Actually rest. Let someone else hold things together for 5 seconds while you fall apart. And if everything falls apart, then it does. And you deal with it. But at least you'll be alive to deal with it. She opened her eyes and looked at him. Really looked at him, like she was trying to figure out how he could make it sound so simple when it felt so impossible. Will you stay? She asked quietly. Just for today. I know you have Emma and class, and I'm asking too much, but I don't want to be alone. Ethan pulled out his phone and texted Sarah, then his professor, then the Maid Pro dispatcher explaining he needed to use one of his sick days. I'll stay, he said. The relief on her face made something in his chest ache. They spent the day in a strange kind of limbo. Celeste slept on and off, her body finally giving in to weeks of exhaustion and stress. Ethan sat in the armchair nearby, doing homework he couldn't focus on, checking her breathing every 15 minutes out of habit. Around 3 p.m., she woke up looking disoriented. How long was I asleep? 4 hours. I have a meeting at 3:30. Not anymore. I called your assistant from your phone, canceled everything through Friday. Celeste sat up fast, then immediately regretted it as a coughing fit took over. Ethan waited it out, handed her water when she finished. You can't just cancel my meetings. I already did. Your assistant seemed thrilled, said, and I quote, "Thank God she needs a break." I'm going to fire you. You keep saying that. I mean it this time. Sure you do. Ethan set down his textbook. When's the last time you ate? I don't know. Breakfast maybe? What did you have? Coffee? That's not breakfast. It is if you drink enough of it. Ethan went to the kitchen and started opening cabinets. The fridge was mostly empty except for expensive sparkling water and some sad-looking takeout containers. The freezer had ice and nothing else. The pantry had protein bars and more coffee. You live like a college student, he called out. I don't have time to grocery shop. You have money to pay someone to grocery shop. I forget to do that too. Ethan found his phone and ordered delivery from the Italian place down the street. Soup, bread, pasta. Actual food that actual humans ate. You're very bossy, Celeste said from the couch. You're very bad at taking care of yourself. I run a company worth $750 million. I think I can manage my own life. Can you? Because from where I'm standing, you're failing pretty spectacularly at the basic stuff. She should have been offended, should have kicked him out. Instead, she just laughed. It came out tired and a little broken, but it was real. Yeah, she said. I really am. The food arrived 45 minutes later. Ethan made her sit at the kitchen table instead of the couch, made her eat actual portions instead of picking at it like a bird. She complained the whole time, but ate 3/4 of a bowl of minestrone and half a piece of bread. Better? He asked. I suppose. If you consider feeling slightly less like death, better. I do. His phone rang. Emma calling from Sarah's phone. Hey, baby? Daddy, when are you coming home? Aunt Sarah says you're helping a friend. I am. I'll be home later tonight, okay? Okay. Is your friend okay? Ethan looked at Celeste, who was studying her soup like it held the answers to complex mathematical equations. She's getting there. Tell her I hope she feels better. I will. Love you. Love you too, Daddy. He hung up to find Celeste watching him with an odd expression. She sounds sweet. She is. Too sweet sometimes. She worries about me more than a 6-year-old should have to. That's because you're a good dad. Good parents raise kids who care. Or I'm screwing her up with all my damage, and she's going to need therapy before she hits puberty. Why not both? Ethan laughed despite himself. You're probably right. They finished eating in comfortable silence. Then Celeste's phone started ringing, and kept ringing. The screen lit up with names Ethan didn't recognize. David, Jennifer, Marcus. The board members, probably. Wondering where she was. Why she'd canceled meetings. What was going on. You should answer, Ethan said. I don't want to. I know. Answer anyway. Celeste stared at the phone like it was a live grenade. Then she picked it up and answered. David, hi. No, I'm fine. Just needed to take some time. Personal health matter. Nothing serious. No, I'll be back Monday. Yes, the acquisition is still on track. I know. Yes, I'll keep you updated. She hung up and immediately slumped against the table. Lying gets easier every time, she said quietly. That's the worst part. I used to feel guilty about it. Now it just feels automatic. Then stop lying. We've been over this. I know, and I'm going to keep saying it until you listen. You're exhausting. So I've been told. Celeste's phone rang again. This time she declined it, then declined the next 3 calls. By the 5th one, she turned the phone off entirely and set it face down on the table. There. Happy? It's a start. They moved back to the living room. Celeste sat on the couch, Ethan in the chair. The sun was starting to set, painting the city in shades of orange and pink that probably looked beautiful from up here, but just made Ethan think about smog. Tell me about Michelle, Celeste said suddenly. Not the sad parts, the good parts. What was she like before she got sick? Ethan thought about that. About Michelle before cancer, before the end, when she was just his wife and Emma's mom and a person who existed in the world. She was loud, he said. Like really loud. She'd laugh at her own jokes before she even finished telling them. She'd sing in the car with the windows down and not care who heard. She took up space in the best way. That sounds nice. It was. It drove me crazy sometimes, but mostly it was nice. She made everything feel more alive, you know? Like the volume on life was turned up when she was around. How did you meet? College. She was in my English 101 class. I was trying to write a paper about The Great Gatsby and failing miserably. She sat down next to me in the library and said, "You look like you're in pain." I said, "F. Scott Fitzgerald is killing me." She said, "Want help?" We stayed up until 3 a.m. working on that paper. I got a B+. She got my phone number. Celeste smiled. That's actually romantic. She thought so. I was mostly just grateful for the B+. When did you know you loved her? About 6 months in. We were at this terrible diner at 2 a.m. because we'd both been studying for finals and were starving. She ordered pancakes and got syrup all over her shirt and just started laughing, like crying laughing. And I looked at her covered in syrup, laughing like a maniac and thought, yeah, this is the person I want to spend my life with. Why? Because she was so completely herself. No pretending, no trying to be perfect. Just Michelle, syrup-covered, and happy about it. Celeste was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I don't think I've ever been that version of myself with anyone. Why not? Because being myself hasn't been allowed since I was about 12. My mother had very specific ideas about what a young woman from a good family should be. Polite, composed, perfect. And then when I started the company, it was the same thing but with different vocabulary. Professional, competent, unflappable, the real me, the messy parts, the parts that don't fit the image. Those have never been welcome. That sounds lonely. It is. She pulled the blanket tighter around herself. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd made different choices. If I told my mother to fuck off and done what I wanted instead of what was expected. If I'd been honest about struggling instead of pretending to have it all figured out. Maybe I wouldn't be sitting here at 30 with damaged lungs and no real friends, and a company that feels more like a prison than an achievement. You have friends. I have business associates, people who want things from me. That's different. What about me? Celeste looked at him. You're the janitor who found my cigarettes and decided to save my life. I don't know what category that falls into. Friend seems like a good start. You barely know me. I know you count hours without smoking like battle victories. I know you cancel meetings once every 4 years and feel guilty about it. I know you're terrified of being weak, and it's literally killing you. That's more than most people know. That's just broken parts. That's not who I am. Maybe the broken parts are who you are. Maybe we're all just broken parts pretending to be whole. Celeste pulled her knees up to her chest, suddenly looking very young. When I was 16, I wanted to be a writer, not a CEO. Not a businesswoman. I wanted to write novels. Completely impractical, according to my mother. So I got a business degree instead. And I was good at it. Really good. And somewhere along the way, I forgot about the novels and became this instead. It's not too late. To write novels? I think it is. I don't even know if I remember how to write anything that isn't an email or a quarterly report. So learn again. When? Between coughing fits and board meetings and trying not to die from my own bad decisions? Celeste. What? You're allowed to want things, even impractical things, even things that don't make sense for a CEO to want. She looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read, something between gratitude and grief. How did you get so okay with things not being perfect? I'm not okay with it. I just don't have the energy to pretend anymore. After Michelle died, I had 2 choices. Fall apart completely, or accept that my life was never going to look the way I planned and figure out how to live with that. Most days I choose option 2. Some days I fail spectacularly at it, but I keep trying. Does it get easier? Sometimes. Other times it gets harder, but at least it's real. At least I'm not performing my life for an audience anymore. They sat in silence as the sun finished setting and the city lights took over. Ethan's phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Emma's asleep. Take your time. Your friend is lucky to have you. He typed back a thank you and looked up to find Celeste watching him. You should go, she said. I'm okay now, really. You're not, but you will be. How do you know? Because you're still here. Because you threw the cigarettes in the pool instead of smoking them. Because you're fighting even when you don't want to. That's not nothing. Celeste's eyes were bright with tears she wouldn't let fall. What if I'm not strong enough? Then you borrow strength from the people who care about you until you find your own again. And what if there's nobody who cares? Ethan stood up, grabbed his bag, and looked at her directly. There's me, and your assistant who was relieved you took time off, and the paramedics who stuck around to make sure you were okay, and probably a dozen other people you don't give enough credit to. You're not as alone as you think you are. Stay, she said suddenly. Just until I fall asleep, please. So Ethan stayed, sat in the chair while Celeste curled up on the couch, and talked about nothing important until her breathing evened out and her face relaxed into something that looked almost peaceful. Before he left, he wrote a note and left it on the coffee table. You made it through today. That's enough. See you Friday. E. He drove home through empty streets thinking about broken people and borrowed strength and how sometimes saving someone looked less like heroics and more like just showing up. When he got home, Sarah was asleep on his couch. She'd left a plate of food in the microwave and a note that said, You're doing good. Keep going. Ethan ate cold meatloaf standing at the kitchen counter at 11 p.m. and wondered what Michelle would think of all this, of him helping a stranger through the same kind of crisis he'd failed to save her from. Whether she'd think it was healing or just him trying to rewrite an ending he couldn't change. His phone buzzed. I'm awake. And okay, thank you for staying. See, anytime, I mean it. I don't know what I would have done today without you. You would have figured it out. You always do. I'm not so sure about that anymore. I am. 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times before her final message came through. Good night, Ethan. Good night, Celeste. He fell asleep on the couch, still dressed, his phone in his hand, and dreamed about Michelle laughing in a diner at 2 a.m., syrup on her shirt and joy in her eyes. When he woke up 3 hours later, he couldn't remember if the dream had been happy or sad. Maybe it was both. Everything important usually was. The breaking point came on a Saturday afternoon, 31 days after Celeste's last cigarette, when Ethan found her sitting on her balcony with an unopened pack in her hand and tears streaming down her face. He wasn't supposed to be there. Saturday wasn't one of his regular shifts. But she'd sent him a text at noon that just said, "I need help," and he'd left Emma with Sarah without explanation and driven across the city like the building was on fire. "Where did you get those?" he asked quietly, stepping onto the balcony. Celeste didn't look up. "Bought them this morning. Walked to the corner store in sweatpants and sunglasses like some kind of celebrity criminal. The cashier didn't even blink, just took my money and wished me a nice day." "Are you going to smoke them?" "I don't know. I've been sitting here for 2 hours trying to decide." Ethan sat down on the expensive outdoor furniture that probably cost more than his monthly rent. The view from up here still made his stomach drop, all that empty space between the balcony and the ground. "What happened?" he asked. "My mother called. First time in 8 months. She saw an article about the acquisition in the Wall Street Journal and wanted to congratulate me on finally doing something worthwhile with my business degree." Celeste's voice was flat, emotionless. "Then she asked if I was seeing anyone. Said I was 30 now and my biological clock was ticking. That I should think about settling down before I got too old and too successful for any decent man to want me." "That's awful." "That's my mother. She specializes in awful disguised as concern." Celeste turned the cigarette pack over in her hands. "And the worst part is, she's not entirely wrong. I'm 30. I have no relationship, no friends, no life outside of work. I've built this empire and I have nobody to share it with. What's the point of any of it?" "The point is you're alive, you're breathing, you're here. Barely. And for what? So I can keep running a company I'm not even sure I like anymore? So I can keep pretending to be someone I'm not? So I can die alone in this sterile apartment surrounded by expensive furniture and nothing that actually matters?" Ethan didn't have a good answer to that. He understood the feeling too well. The late nights when Emma was asleep and the apartment was quiet, and he'd wonder what the point was of any of it. Working himself to death for an apartment he could barely afford, raising a daughter who'd grow up and leave, existing in a world that had taken Michelle and left him behind to figure out how to keep going. "I went on a date once," Celeste said suddenly, "about 2 years ago. Someone from the tech industry, CEO of a startup. Very successful, very handsome, very everything I was supposed to want. We went to this restaurant that cost $400 a plate and talked about market valuations and venture capital, and I realized halfway through the appetizer that I was performing, that I was being CEO Celeste instead of just Celeste, and I didn't even know who just Celeste was anymore." "What happened?" "I excused myself to the bathroom and had a panic attack in a stall that was nicer than my first apartment. Then I went back out, finished dinner, smiled at all the right moments, and never saw him again. He texted me 3 times asking for a second date. I never responded. Why not? Because I knew I'd just do the same thing again. Perform, pretend. Show him the version of me that looked good on paper. And eventually, he'd figure out there was nothing real underneath, and he'd leave, and I'd have wasted both our time." Ethan looked at her, at this woman who had everything except the things that actually mattered, and felt something crack open in his chest. "You want to know what I think?" he asked. "Not particularly, but you'll tell me anyway. I think you're so scared of people seeing the real you that you've convinced yourself the real you doesn't exist. But she does. She's the person who wanted to write novels at 16. She's the person who cried in a bathroom stall at a fancy restaurant because she was tired of pretending. She's the person sitting on this balcony right now holding cigarettes. She doesn't actually want to smoke because she's terrified and sad and human. That person is a mess. Yeah, she is. So what? So nobody wants a mess. They want the polished version, the successful version, the version that fits." "I want the mess," Ethan said quietly. "I've been showing up here 3 times a week for over a month dealing with your mess, and I keep coming back. Because the mess is real, and real is better than perfect." Celeste finally looked at him. Her eyes were red, Her face was blotchy, and she looked about as far from a magazine cover as it was possible to get. "Why do you care so much?" she asked. "Really, I need to understand because I can't figure out what you're getting out of this. You have your own life, your own problems. Why waste your time on mine?" Ethan thought about how to answer that, about all the complicated truths that didn't have simple explanations. "Because when Michelle was dying, I felt completely helpless," he said. "I couldn't fix her, couldn't save her, couldn't do anything except watch her disappear. And maybe this is selfish, but helping you feels like getting a second chance at something I failed at before. Even though I know that's not fair to you, that you're not Michelle, that this isn't about rewriting my own story." "It's a little bit about that," Celeste said. "Yeah, it is, but it's also about you. About watching someone kill themselves slowly and knowing I have the power to at least try to stop it. And choosing not to would make me the kind of person I don't want to be." Celeste was quiet for a long moment. Then she held out the cigarette pack. "Take them." Ethan took the pack and stood up, walked to the edge of the balcony, and threw them over. They tumbled down 68 floors and disappeared into the city below. "That's littering," Celeste said. "Sue me. Add it to the tab." She almost smiled. Almost. "I can't keep doing this. I can't keep white-knuckling through every day. Something has to change." "So change it. How?" "Tell the truth. To your board, to your mother, to yourself. Stop performing and start living. And if everything falls apart, then you rebuild. But at least you'll be building something real instead of maintaining something fake." Celeste stood up, walked to the railing, looked out at the city. "I have a board meeting on Monday. They want to finalize the acquisition terms. I'm supposed to present a 5-year growth strategy and convince them I'm the right person to lead the company through the next phase. Are you? I don't know. A month ago, I would have said yes without hesitation. Now I'm not sure I want to lead anything. I'm not sure I want any of this. What do you want?" She laughed, but it sounded broken. "I want to sleep through the night without coughing. I want to have a conversation with someone without calculating how they perceive me. I want to write something that isn't a business proposal. I want to be a person instead of a brand." Those are all reasonable things to want. They're also incompatible with being a CEO. Maybe. Or maybe you've been doing CEO wrong. Celeste turned to look at him. "What would doing it right look like?" "I have no idea. I clean penthouses for a living, but I'd guess it involves being honest about limitations instead of pretending they don't exist, asking for help instead of suffering in silence, being human instead of superhuman. The market doesn't reward human. It rewards performance." "Fuck the market. You're dying." The bluntness of it seemed to shock her. She opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. "I'm not dying. I have COPD. It's manageable." "Is it? Because from where I'm standing, you're barely managing. You're one bad day away from a complete breakdown. And if you don't make some serious changes, something's going to give. So what am I supposed to do? Walk into the board meeting and say, 'Hi everyone, I've been lying about my health for weeks. I have a chronic illness from smoking, and I'm not sure I'm competent to do this job anymore.' That's career suicide. Maybe. Or maybe it's the first honest thing you've done in years, and it saves your life." Celeste sank back down into the chair, all the fight going out of her. "I'm so tired, Ethan. I'm tired of fighting, tired of pretending, tired of trying to be strong enough for everyone else when I can barely be strong enough for myself." "Then stop being strong, fall apart, let other people catch you for once." "What if nobody catches me?" "Then you hit the ground, and it hurts, and you get back up eventually. But at least you'll know you tried." They sat there in silence while the sun moved across the sky and the city hummed below them. After a while, Celeste's phone started ringing. She ignored it. It rang again and again. By the 4th call, she turned it off entirely. That was probably David, checking in about Monday. Let him wait. "He's my board chairman. I can't just ignore him." "You just did." Celeste looked at her dark phone screen like it was a foreign object. "I've never ignored a call from David, not once in 6 years. How does it feel?" "Terrifying and kind of liberating. Is that normal?" "I think so. I wouldn't know. Nobody important ever calls me." "I call you. You're different." "How?" Ethan thought about how to answer that, about how their relationship had evolved from CEO and janitor to something he didn't have a name for, something that involved 3 a.m. phone calls and stolen cigarettes and sitting on balconies talking about things that mattered. You're real with me, he said finally. Even when you're trying not to be. Even when you're scared or angry or falling apart. And that matters more than any title or position or amount of money ever could. Celeste's eyes were bright again. I think you might be the best friend I've ever had, which is either really sweet or really sad, given that you're literally paid to be in my presence. I'm paid to clean your apartment. The friendship is pro bono. She laughed for real this time. Not the bitter, broken sound from earlier. An actual laugh. What am I going to do, Ethan? About Monday? About everything. I don't know, but I know you'll figure it out, and I know you don't have to figure it out alone. His phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Emma's getting worried. You've been gone 4 hours. Everything okay? Guilt hit him hard. He'd left without explanation, without a timeline, just dropped his daughter off and disappeared to deal with someone else's crisis. I need to go, he said. Emma's waiting. Of course, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to take up your whole day. You didn't take anything. I chose to be here. Why? Because you asked for help, and because I'm your friend, and friends show up. Celeste stood and walked him to the door. At the threshold, she reached out and hugged him. It was awkward and unpracticed, the hug of someone who wasn't used to physical affection, but it was real. Thank you, she said quietly, for everything, for not giving up on me. I'm not going to, even when you want me to, I know. That's what makes you so annoying. Ethan drove home thinking about choices and consequences and how sometimes the right thing was also the hardest thing. When he got to Sarah's house, Emma was in the front yard drawing on the sidewalk with chalk. Daddy! She ran to him, and he caught her up in his arms. You were gone forever. I know. I'm sorry, baby. Is your friend okay? She's getting there. Emma studied his face with that too knowing look. You look sad. I'm not sad, just tired. That's what you always say. Sarah appeared in the doorway, gave him a look that said they'd be talking later, but just said, She had lunch. We made cookies. She's been good. Thank you. Anytime. But Ethan, whatever's going on with your friend, you need to make sure you're not drowning while trying to save her. I'm fine. That's what you always say too. That night, after Emma was asleep, Ethan sat on his couch with a beer he wasn't really drinking and thought about drowning. About how Michelle had drowned in cancer, and he'd drowned in grief, and now Celeste was drowning in expectations and addiction and fear. And maybe Sarah was right. Maybe he was drowning too. In responsibility and guilt and the weight of trying to be enough for everyone who needed him. His phone buzzed. I've been thinking about Monday, about what you said. I'm going to tell them. Not everything, but some of it. The health stuff, at least. I'm terrified, but I think you're right. I think something has to change. Ethan stared at that message for a long time before responding. I'm proud of you. Don't be proud yet. I might chicken out. You won't. How do you know? Because you're braver than you think you are. You just need to start believing it. 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times. Will you be there? Monday night after the meeting? I think I'm going to need someone to either celebrate with or fall apart in front of. Possibly both. I'll be there. Thank you. Anytime. Monday came too fast and too slow at the same time. Ethan went through his regular routine, dropped Emma at school, went to his morning class, tried to focus on supply chain management while his brain kept drifting to Celeste sitting in a boardroom 68 floors above the city, trying to tell the truth for the first time in months. His phone stayed silent until 4 p.m. It's done. I told them. Now I'm sitting in my office waiting to see if I still have a job. What did you say? That I've been dealing with a serious health issue. That I've been managing it, but it's affected my availability and focus. That I understand if they need to reconsider my position. I didn't tell them about the smoking. I couldn't. But I told them enough. How did they react? David asked a lot of questions. Jennifer looked concerned. Marcus looked like he was calculating how this affects stock prices. Normal board stuff. They're meeting without me now to discuss next steps. You did good. I might have just ended my career. Or you might have just saved your life. Worth it either way. The 3 dots appeared and stayed there for almost 5 minutes. I'm scared. I know. Be scared anyway. He didn't hear from her again until 7 p.m. He was making dinner for Emma, boxed mac and cheese because it was Monday and he was exhausted, when his phone rang. Ethan? Her voice sounded strange, tight and high and barely controlled. What happened? They offered me a sabbatical, 3 months, paid, to focus on my health and recovery. They're bringing in an interim CEO to manage operations. When I come back, we'll reassess my role and responsibilities. That's good, right? I don't know. Is it good? Or is it them easing me out, making it look compassionate while they replace me? Does it matter? What do you mean, does it matter? This is my company, my life's work. And you were killing yourself for it. So maybe 3 months to figure out if it's actually what you want is exactly what you need. Silence. Then a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. I don't know what I want anymore. Then you have 3 months to figure it out. What am I supposed to do with 3 months? Rest. Heal. Write those novels you've been thinking about since you were 16. Figure out who Celeste is when she's not CEO Celeste. That sounds terrifying. Probably, but also maybe necessary. Another long pause, then, can I see you? Tonight? I know it's your shift anyway, but I need to not be alone right now. I'll be there at 11. He finished making dinner, helped Emma with homework, did the bedtime routine that had become as automatic as breathing. Bath, pajamas, teeth, story, lights out. The rhythm of single parenting that had kept him sane for 4 years. Emma was almost asleep when she said, Daddy, is your friend going to be okay? I think so, baby. Why? Because you seem worried about her, like you were worried about Mommy. Ethan's chest tightened. Your friend is going through a hard time, but she's strong. She'll be okay. That's good. I hope I get to meet her someday. Maybe, someday. Does she make you smile? Sometimes. Why? Because you don't smile a lot. But when you talk about her, you smile, even when you're worried. Ethan didn't know what to say to that. He kissed Emma's forehead and left the room before she could see his expression. At 11 p.m., he showed up at Celeste's penthouse with his cleaning supplies and no idea what to expect. She opened the door before he could knock, wearing sweatpants and an old t-shirt, her hair pulled back, no makeup. She looked more real than he'd ever seen her. Hi, she said. Hi. I ordered pizza. I hope that's okay. I realized I haven't eaten since breakfast, and I was either going to eat or pass out, and eating seemed healthier. Pizza's good. They sat at her kitchen counter eating mediocre pizza that probably cost 3 times what it should have because of the neighborhood. And Celeste talked about the board meeting, about David's questions and Jennifer's concern and Marcus's barely concealed calculation, about how it felt to finally stop lying, about how terrifying it was to have 3 months of unstructured time stretching ahead of her. I don't know how to not work, she said. Work is what I do. It's who I am. Without it, I'm just a person, Ethan finished. You're just a person. Just a person isn't enough. Why not? Because just a person doesn't build billion-dollar companies. Just a person doesn't change industries or create jobs or matter. Michelle was just a person. She mattered more than anything. Celeste set down her pizza slice. I'm sorry, that was insensitive. It was honest, and I'd rather have honest than careful. They finished eating in silence. Then Ethan pulled out his cleaning supplies and Celeste stopped him. Don't, she said. Not tonight. Just stay. Talk to me. Help me figure out what the hell I'm supposed to do now. So Ethan stayed. They moved to the living room, to the couch and chair that had become their unofficial spots, and talked until 2 a.m. about everything and nothing. About Emma's school play coming up. About Celeste's idea for a novel about a woman who builds an empire and loses herself in the process. About whether 3 months was enough time to figure out a whole life. I think I want to leave Los Angeles, Celeste said at some point. Go somewhere quiet. Somewhere nobody knows who I am. Just exist for a while without expectations. Where would you go? I don't know, Maine maybe, or Montana, somewhere with trees and space and no tech industry. That sounds nice. It sounds lonely. Lonely isn't always bad. Sometimes it's just quiet. Celeste looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Would you come with me? If I went? Ethan's heart did something complicated. I have Emma. I can't just leave. I know, I wasn't serious. I don't know how to do this alone. You're not alone. Even if I'm here and you're in Montana, you're not alone. How does that work? Phones, text, FaceTime, whatever. People manage long-distance friendships all the time. Is that what this is? Friendship? What else would it be? Celeste didn't answer that, just looked at him in a way that made something shift in the air between them. Something that felt dangerous and complicated and like it could ruin everything if they acknowledged it. I should go, Ethan said, standing up too fast. It's late. Emma has school tomorrow. Right, of course. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to keep you. You didn't. I wanted to be here. At the door, Celeste reached out and took his hand, just held it for a moment, her fingers cold and shaking slightly. Thank you, she said. For everything, for showing up, for not letting me give up, for being real with me when everyone else just tells me what they think I want to hear. That's what friends do. I've never had a friend like you. Good. I'd hate to be replaceable. She smiled, small and sad and real. You're not. Trust me. You're very much not. Ethan drove home with his mind spinning and his chest tight, and the feeling that something fundamental had shifted between them tonight. Something he wasn't ready to name or acknowledge or deal with. When he got home, he sat in his truck for 20 minutes, just breathing, trying to figure out what he was feeling. It wasn't love. It couldn't be love. He barely knew her. They were just two broken people helping each other survive. But it wasn't nothing either. His phone buzzed. 33 days. I made it 33 days without smoking, and I'm still alive. That has to count for something. It counts for everything. I couldn't have done it without you. Yes, you could have, but I'm glad you didn't have to. What happens now? Ethan stared at that question. What did happen now? She had 3 months to figure out her life. He had Emma and work and community college classes. They lived in different worlds that had only intersected because he cleaned her penthouse and noticed she was dying. Now you rest, he typed, and heal, and figure out who you want to be. And I'll be here if you need me. Promise? Promise. He went inside and fell asleep on the couch fully dressed, his phone still in his hand, and dreamed about nothing at all. The change didn't happen overnight. That was the first thing Ethan learned about healing. It happened in small moments scattered across weeks, in choices made and remade every morning, in the slow accumulation of better days outweighing the bad ones. Celeste left Los Angeles 2 weeks after the board meeting. Not to Montana or Maine like she'd talked about, but to a small rental house in Ojai, 90 minutes north of the city. Close enough to drive back if needed, far enough to feel like escape. She texted Ethan a photo the day she arrived, a small cottage with a porch surrounded by orange groves and mountains. Nothing like the penthouse. This is home for the next 3 months. It has a fireplace and terrible Wi-Fi, and I already love it. Looks peaceful. It's terrifying. I've been here 2 hours, and I've already checked my email 40 times because I don't know what else to do with myself. Stop checking your email. Easier said than done. Delete the app from your phone. That's insane. So is checking your email 40 times in 2 hours when you're supposed to be on sabbatical. 20 minutes later, she sent another text. I deleted it. I hate you. No, you don't. You're right, but I'm panicking. That's normal. Panic anyway. Ethan didn't see her for 3 weeks after that. They texted most days, random updates about nothing important. She told him about learning to cook actual meals instead of surviving on takeout and protein bars. About hiking trails that made her lungs hurt, but in a different way than cigarettes had. About the first time she slept past 6 a.m. in years and woke up feeling guilty about it. He told her about Emma's school play, where she played a tree and took the role very seriously. About finally passing his marketing class. About the new client MaidPro assigned him to replace her penthouse, some finance guy who left protein shake residue on everything and never said thank you. I miss having you around, she texted one night. The cottage is quiet, but it's also lonely. Turns out when you spend your whole life avoiding real relationships, you don't have anyone to call when you're bored and sad. You can call me. It's 11 p.m. Don't you have work? Not tonight. Emma's at a sleepover. I'm just sitting here watching TV I'm not paying attention to. His phone rang 30 seconds later. Hi, Celeste said when he answered. She sounded different, softer, less guarded. Hi, tell me about your day. I want to hear about normal people problems instead of spiraling about my own mess. So Ethan told her about the grocery store being out of the specific brand of chicken nuggets Emma would eat, which meant dinner had been a negotiation more complex than most business deals. About his truck making a new sound that probably meant expensive repairs he couldn't afford. About running into one of Michelle's old friends at the pharmacy and having to do the whole "how are you doing" dance where everyone pretended it wasn't awkward. That sounds exhausting, Celeste said. It was. But it was also just life. Sometimes life is exhausting. I'm learning that. Turns out when you stop working 18 hours a day, you actually have to deal with being a person who has feelings and needs and all that messy stuff. How's that going? Terribly. I had a full breakdown yesterday because I burned toast. Actual tears over toast. I'm 30 years old and I cried about bread. That's not about the toast. I know. It's about everything. About feeling incompetent at basic tasks because I spent 12 years optimizing for business success instead of life skills. About being scared I'll never figure out how to be a normal person. There's no such thing as a normal person. We're all just making it up as we go. You seem pretty put together. Ethan laughed. I'm really not. I had a panic attack in a frozen food aisle, remember? I still have nights where I can't sleep because my brain won't stop spiraling. I still feel guilty about working too much and not being present enough for Emma. I'm a mess. I've just had more practice at functioning while being a mess. How long does it take to get good at functioning while falling apart? I'll let you know when I figure it out. They talked until almost 1 a.m. about nothing and everything. And when they finally hung up, Ethan realized he was smiling. Actually smiling, alone in his apartment at 1 a.m., because talking to Celeste had become the best part of some days. That probably meant something. He chose not to think too hard about what. The first time he drove to Ojai was on a Saturday, 6 weeks into Celeste's sabbatical. She'd texted him that morning saying she was having a bad day, that the cravings were worse than they'd been in weeks, that she couldn't stop thinking about cigarettes. Do you need me to come up there? He'd asked. I don't want to be an imposition. That's not what I asked. Yes. I need you to come up here, please. So he dropped Emma at Sarah's with minimal explanation and driven 90 minutes through mountains and orange groves to a small cottage that looked exactly like the photo. Celeste was sitting on the porch when he arrived, wearing jeans and a sweater that looked like it came from an actual store instead of costing a mortgage payment. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. She wasn't wearing makeup. She looked more real than he'd ever seen her. You came, she said, standing up. You asked me to. I know, but I didn't think you actually would. It's a long drive. 90 minutes isn't that long. She hugged him without warning, and Ethan found himself hugging back, one hand on her back, breathing in whatever shampoo she used now that probably came from a regular drugstore instead of some luxury brand. Thank you for coming, she said into his shoulder. I was about to get in my car and drive to a gas station to buy cigarettes. I had my keys in my hand. But you didn't. Because I called you instead. She pulled back and her eyes were red. 48 days. I've made it 48 days and I almost threw it away because I had a bad morning. What happened? I got an email from David. Not about work. Just checking in, he said. But reading between the lines, he was asking if I'm planning to come back. If I'm actually getting better or just delaying the inevitable. And I realized, I don't know. I don't know if I want to go back. I don't know if I'm better. I don't know anything except that I'm 48 days sober and terrified every single day that I'm going to fail. Come on, Ethan said, taking her hand. Show me around. She showed him the cottage. It was small and simple, nothing like the penthouse. A living room with a couch and a fireplace. A kitchen with actual food in the cabinets. A bedroom with a bed that looked slept in instead of perfectly made. A desk by the window where a laptop sat closed, a notebook next to it covered in handwriting. Are you writing? He asked, gesturing to the notebook. Trying to. Mostly it's garbage, but I'm trying. Can I read it? Absolutely not. It's terrible. I don't care if it's terrible. I care that you're doing it. Celeste picked up the notebook, held it for a moment, then handed it to him. Don't judge me. Ethan read the first page. It was about a woman who built a company and lost herself. About pressure and performance and the slow realization that success didn't equal happiness. The writing was rough, unpolished, but it was honest in a way that made his chest tight. This is good, he said. You're lying. I'm not. It's raw and real, and that's what makes it good. Or it's just me processing my own damage on paper and calling it a novel. Maybe it's both. Maybe that's what all good writing is. They spent the day together, walked a trail through the orange groves that made Celeste have to stop and catch her breath 3 times. But she kept going anyway. Made lunch in her tiny kitchen, where she burned the grilled cheese and laughed about it instead of crying. Sat on the porch in the afternoon sun while she told him about the therapy sessions she'd started, about how hard it was to talk about feelings when you'd spent 30 years pretending you didn't have them. My therapist asked me when I last felt truly happy, Celeste said. Not successful, not accomplished, just happy. And I couldn't answer. I went through my whole life and couldn't find a single moment that was just happy without being attached to some achievement. What about now? What about it? Are you happy right now? Celeste thought about that. I'm not miserable. That's probably the best I can do right now. Not miserable is a good start. Is that what happiness is, just the absence of misery? Sometimes, other times it's more. But you have to get through not miserable before you can get to actually happy. Where are you on that scale? Ethan considered the question. Somewhere in between. I have moments of actual happiness, usually involving Emma, but mostly I'm just not miserable anymore. And that took a long time to get to. Do you think I'll get there? Yeah, I do. How do you know? Because you're here. Because you're trying. Because you drove to Ojai instead of going back to work. Because you called me instead of buying cigarettes. All of that is moving towards something better. Celeste leaned her head on his shoulder, and Ethan didn't move. Just sat there while the sun set over the orange groves and the air got cooler and something between them shifted into territory that felt both inevitable and terrifying. I think I'm falling for you, she said quietly, and I don't know what to do about it. Ethan's heart stopped, restarted, stopped again. Celeste? I know. It's complicated. You're grieving. I'm a mess. We live different lives. There are probably 1,000 reasons this is a terrible idea, but I needed you to know. Because I'm trying to be honest now. And honestly, you've become the most important person in my life. You're important to me too. But I don't know if I'm ready for this. For anything that isn't just friendship. Michelle's only been gone 4 years. Emma needs stability. I can't offer you what you deserve. What if I'm not asking for anything? What if I just needed you to know how I feel? Then I'm glad you told me, and I'm sorry I can't say what you want to hear. Celeste sat up, and there were tears on her face, but she was smiling. Don't apologize. I'd rather have you honest than careful. They didn't talk about it again that day. Ethan drove home that night with his mind spinning and his chest aching and the knowledge that something had changed between them that couldn't be unchanged. Emma noticed he was distracted when he picked her up from Sarah's. Did something happen with your friend? She asked. Sort of. Good something or bad something? I don't know yet, baby. Do you love her? The question landed like a punch. Ethan looked at his 6-year-old daughter in the rearview mirror. What makes you ask that? Because you talk about her the way you used to talk about Mommy, like she's important. She is important, but it's complicated. Why? Because grown-up feelings are complicated. That's a dumb answer. Yeah, it really is. The next 2 weeks were strange. Celeste and Ethan still texted, but the messages felt different, more careful. Like they were both trying to navigate around the things she'd said, and he hadn't been able to say back. Then on a Tuesday morning, Ethan got a call from an unknown number. Mr. Cole? This is Jennifer Chen from Celeste Vaughn's board. Do you have a moment to talk? Ethan's stomach dropped. Is she okay? She's fine. I'm calling because she listed you as an emergency contact, and I wanted to reach out before the board makes any decisions about her future with the company. What kind of decisions? The sabbatical ends in 3 weeks. We need to know if she's planning to return or if we should make other arrangements. She's not responding to emails or calls. I was hoping you might have insight. Why would I have insight? Because, according to her assistant, you're the only person she talks to. The only person who seems to know what's actually going on with her. Ethan sat down on his couch. I think she's figuring out what she wants, and I think pushing her for an answer before she's ready is the worst thing you could do. We have a company to run, Mr. Cole. We can't wait indefinitely. Then don't. Make your plans. But don't make them about whether she can perform. Make them about what's actually best for the company and for her. That's not how business works. Maybe it should be. Jennifer was quiet for a moment. You care about her? Yeah, I do. Good. She needs people who care about her instead of just caring about what she can do for them. The call ended and Ethan immediately texted Celeste. Your board is calling me now. You need to talk to them. I know. I've been avoiding it. Why? Because I don't know what to say. I don't know if I want to go back. And I don't know how to tell them that without disappointing everyone. So disappoint them. It's your life. Easy for you to say. It's not easy, but it's necessary. 3 days later, Celeste showed up at Ethan's apartment unannounced. He opened the door to find her standing there looking nervous and determined at the same time. I quit, she said. What? I called the board this morning, told them I'm not coming back, that I'm stepping down as CEO effective immediately, that they should make the interim position permanent. Ethan pulled her inside, closed the door. Are you okay? I'm terrified. I just walked away from everything I spent 12 years building, but I'm also relieved, and I think that means it was the right choice. What are you going to do? I don't know. Write, maybe. Figure out who I am without the company. Move somewhere that isn't Los Angeles. Actually live instead of just working. She paused. I wanted to tell you in person, because you're the reason I had the courage to do it. I didn't do anything. You showed me that there's more to life than performance, that being human is more important than being perfect, that it's okay to walk away from things that are killing you. She took a breath. And I know you're not ready. I know I said I wasn't asking for anything, but I need to say this anyway. I love you. Not because you saved me, but because you saw me, the real me, and you didn't run away. Ethan's chest felt too tight. Celeste, you don't have to say it back. I'm not asking you to. I just needed you to know. Because I'm trying to be honest now. About everything. I care about you. More than I probably should. But I'm not there yet. I don't know if I'll ever be there. That's okay. I'll take caring about me. That's more than most people get. Emma's door opened, and she appeared in the hallway in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes. Daddy, who's here? This is Celeste, baby. My friend I've been telling you about. Emma walked over and looked up at Celeste with that assessing expression kids get when they're deciding if they like someone. You're the one who makes Daddy smile. Celeste laughed, and it came out a little choked. I try. I'm Emma. I'm 6. I can read like a 3rd grader. That's very impressive. I'm Celeste. I'm 30, and I just quit my job. Why? Because it was making me sick and sad. That's dumb. Jobs shouldn't make you sick and sad. You're absolutely right. It was very dumb. Emma studied her for another moment, then nodded, satisfied. Okay, you can stay, but Daddy has to make breakfast because I'm hungry. She went back to her room, and Ethan and Celeste just looked at each other. She's wonderful, Celeste said. She's something. She looks like you. She looks like Michelle. She looks like both of you, like the best parts of something that was good. Ethan made breakfast while Celeste sat at his tiny kitchen table in his tiny apartment that was nothing like her penthouse or even her cottage in Ojai. Emma joined them and talked nonstop about school and her friend Sophia and the book she was reading about a girl who solved mysteries. Watching Celeste listen to his daughter with genuine interest, asking follow-up questions and laughing at Emma's jokes, something in Ethan's chest loosened. Not enough to call it love, not yet, but enough to call it possibility. After breakfast, Celeste helped clean up, and Emma declared she liked her and could she come over again sometime. If your dad says it's okay, Celeste said. It's okay, Ethan said. You can come over whenever you want. At the door, before she left, Celeste hugged him. Thank you for being honest, for not pretending to feel things you don't. I'd rather have your honesty than comfortable lies. I'm trying to figure it out, what I feel, what I want. It's just taking me longer than it probably should. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. Over the next month, Celeste became a regular presence in Ethan's life in a way that felt natural instead of forced. She'd drive down from Ojai on weekends, have dinner with him and Emma, help with homework, exist in their space without trying to change it. She told him about the novel she was actually writing now, not just thinking about therapy sessions where she was learning that her worth wasn't tied to her productivity, about the first time in weeks she'd gone a full day without thinking about cigarettes. Ethan told her about finally getting his associate degree from community college, about Emma's teacher saying she was reading at a fifth grade level now, about the promotion he'd gotten at MaidPro that came with a small raise and slightly better hours. They existed around each other, not pushing, not demanding, just being. And slowly, so slowly he almost didn't notice it happening, Ethan felt something in him start to heal. Not the grief. That would always be there, but the fear that loving someone new meant betraying Michelle's memory. The guilt that moving forward meant leaving her behind. 3 months after Celeste quit, she moved to a small house 20 minutes from Ethan's apartment. Not in his building, not in his space, but close enough that Emma could ride her bike there. Close enough that dinner together became a regular thing instead of a special occasion. 6 months after that, on a random Tuesday, when nothing special was happening except that they were alive and together and that felt like enough, Ethan kissed her. They were sitting on her couch, Emma asleep in the guest room after movie night, and Celeste was telling him about a scene in her novel that wasn't working. And Ethan looked at her, at this woman who'd fought so hard to become real, and just leaned over and kissed her. When they pulled apart, she was crying. "What's wrong?" he asked. "Nothing. Everything's right. That's what's wrong. I'm not used to things being right. Get used to it. Is this real? Are we doing this? I think we've been doing this for a while now. I was just too scared to admit it." "Are you still scared?" "Terrified, but I'm doing it anyway." Celeste laughed through her tears. "That seems to be our thing, being terrified and doing things anyway." "Yeah, it really is." They didn't move fast, didn't rush into anything. Ethan still had Emma to think about, still had his own healing to do. Celeste still had her novel to finish, her health to manage, her own work of becoming a person who could be in a relationship without losing herself. But they moved forward, together, taking it one day at a time, one choice at a time, one moment of courage at a time. Emma asked about it one morning at breakfast, 8 months into whatever they were calling this thing between them. "Is Celeste going to be my new mom?" Ethan nearly choked on his coffee. Where did that come from? Sophia says when dads have girlfriends, sometimes they become new moms. Celeste isn't trying to replace your mom. Nobody could replace your mom. I know, but could she be like an extra mom? Like how Aunt Sarah is kind of like a mom, but not really? Maybe. Someday. If that's what everyone wants, but that's a long way off. Okay. I was just wondering. I like her. She's nice. And she makes you less sad. She does, doesn't she? Yeah. You smile more now, like you used to when Mommy was here. That night, Ethan told Celeste about the conversation. Is that too much pressure? He asked. Emma thinking about you that way? It's terrifying, Celeste admitted. I don't know how to be a mom. I barely know how to be a functional adult. Nobody knows how to be a mom until they are one. And you're already good with Emma. You show up, you listen, you care. That's most of it right there. What about the rest of it? We figure it out as we go, like everything else. Celeste's novel sold 8 months later. Not for a huge advance, not to a major publisher, but to a small press that loved it and believed in it. She cried when she got the news, called Ethan from the coffee shop where she'd been writing, unable to even form complete sentences. I did it, she kept saying. I actually did it. I wrote a book and someone wants to publish it. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of me too. Is that allowed? Absolutely. At the book launch, a small event at an independent bookstore in Ojai, Celeste dedicated the novel to 2 people, Michelle Cole, who she'd never met but whose death had saved her life, and Ethan Cole, who'd seen her drowning and refused to look away. Ethan stood in the back of the bookstore, Emma beside him, and watched this woman he'd found dying on a kitchen floor stand in front of strangers and talk about her book, her recovery, her journey to becoming someone real. Daddy, Emma whispered, are you crying? A little bit. Happy crying or sad crying? Both, but mostly happy. A year after Celeste quit her job, the company she'd built went public again under new leadership. The stock price tripled. Media outlets called it one of the most successful acquisitions in tech history. Celeste got calls from reporters asking for comment, asking if she regretted leaving, asking if she wished she'd stayed. She declined all of them. "Don't you want people to know your side?" Ethan asked. "My side is that I chose my life over my career, and I'd make that choice again every single day." "That's not a story they want to hear. They want me to be bitter or regretful or angry, and I'm none of those things. I'm just happy." "Are you? Happy?" Celeste thought about it. "Yeah, actually happy. Not just not miserable, but real actual happiness. Is that weird?" "No, it's perfect." 2 years after they met, Ethan and Celeste got married in a small ceremony in Celeste's backyard in Ojai. Emma was the flower girl and took the job very seriously. Sarah cried. Celeste's therapist came, a few friends from Ethan's support group. Nobody from Celeste's old life except her assistant, who'd become an actual friend instead of just an employee. Celeste's mother didn't come. She'd sent a card that said congratulations in cursive that looked printed rather than handwritten. Celeste had thrown it away without comment. "Are you sad she's not here?" Ethan asked the morning of the wedding. "No, I'm sad about what it represents, about the relationship we'll never have. But I'm not sad she's not here. The people who matter are here." At the reception, Emma gave a speech she'd written herself about how Celeste taught her that it's okay to be scared and do things anyway, about how love means showing up even when it's hard, about how she was glad her daddy found someone who makes him smile. There wasn't a dry eye in the place. That night, after Emma was asleep in the guest room and the house was quiet, Ethan and Celeste sat on the porch looking at the stars. "I never thought I'd have this," Celeste said. "A marriage, a family, a life that feels real instead of performed." "I never thought I'd have it again," Ethan said. "After Michelle, I thought that part of my life was over." "Are you glad you were wrong?" "Yeah, I really am." "Do you still miss her?" "Every day, but it's different now, quieter, more like gratitude for what we had instead of grief for what I lost." "Do you think she'd like me?" Ethan thought about Michelle, about her laugh and her loud singing and her complete inability to pretend to be anything she wasn't. "Yeah, I think she would. I think she'd like that you make me happy, and I think she'd like that you're good to Emma." "I'm trying. I don't always know what I'm doing." "None of us do. We're all just making it up as we go." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Celeste said, "I've been sober for 2 years and 3 months now. Some days are still hard. Some days I still want a cigarette so badly I can taste it. But most days I don't think about it at all anymore." "That's huge. It's because of you, because you noticed, because you cared enough to make it impossible for me to keep lying. You did the work. I just pointed out that the work needed doing. Still, I'd be dead without you, or close to it. And instead I'm here, married, happy, writing books, being a stepmom, living a life I didn't even know I wanted. Sounds like a good life. It's the best life. It's real and messy, and sometimes Emma spills juice on my manuscript, and sometimes I burn dinner, and sometimes I still have panic attacks about nothing. But it's mine. Actually mine. Not some performance of what I think my life should look like." Ethan took her hand. "I'm glad you're here." "Me too." 3 years later, Celeste's second novel was published. It was about a single father who saves a stranger's life by refusing to mind his own business. It became a bestseller. In interviews, reporters asked if it was based on a true story. Celeste always said the same thing, that all stories are based on truth. But this one was based on the specific truth that sometimes the people who save us are the ones we least expect. That sometimes healing looks like a night janitor and a CEO becoming friends. That sometimes love grows in the spaces between crisis and recovery. She never told them it was about her and Ethan. That felt private, sacred, theirs. Emma read the book when she was 12 and cried through the whole thing. "Is this about you and Dad?" she asked. "Parts of it," Celeste admitted. "The part where she almost dies?" "Yeah." "I'm glad Dad found you. I'm glad he noticed you were sick." "Me too, baby. Me too." On their 5th anniversary, Ethan and Celeste drove back to Los Angeles. They stood outside the Meridian Towers, looking up at the 68th floor. "Do you ever miss it?" Ethan asked. "The penthouse, the company, the life you had?" "Sometimes I miss the certainty, knowing exactly who I was supposed to be and what I was supposed to do. But I don't miss the person I was. She was dying and didn't even know it. And now? Now I'm alive. Really alive. Not just existing. Not just performing. Actually living. They drove to the cemetery after that. To Michelle's grave, which Ethan still visited sometimes, though less frequently than he used to. Celeste waited in the car while he knelt by the headstone and talked to his first wife about his second one, about Emma growing up, about the life he'd built from the pieces of the one that had shattered. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For Emma, for the good years, for teaching me what love looks like. I'm doing okay now. Better than okay. And I think you'd be glad about that." When he got back to the car, Celeste didn't ask what he'd said, just took his hand and held it while they drove home to Ojai, to Emma, to the life they'd built together from broken pieces and second chances. That night, after Emma was in bed, Ethan found Celeste on the porch with her laptop, working on her third novel. "What's this one about?" he asked. "A woman who learns that strength isn't about never falling apart. It's about putting yourself back together and asking for help when you can't do it alone." Sounds familiar. All my books are the same story in different ways, about broken people figuring out how to be whole, about choosing honesty over performance, about the courage it takes to be real. Write what you know, right? Something like that. Ethan kissed the top of her head and went inside to clean up from dinner. He'd quit MaidPro 2 years ago, taken a management position at a small cleaning company that paid better and had better hours. He'd finished his bachelor's degree. He was thinking about a master's program, though that felt ambitious for someone who'd barely graduated high school. But he'd learned from Celeste that ambition wasn't the enemy. Destroying yourself for ambition was. The difference mattered. Years later, when Emma graduated from college, she gave a speech at the ceremony about the people who'd shaped her life. She talked about her mother, who she barely remembered but whose love had been real enough to last beyond death. She talked about her Aunt Sarah, who'd been there for every school play and scraped knee. She talked about her father, who'd shown her that strength means showing up even when you're exhausted. And she talked about Celeste, who taught her that it's never too late to choose a different path, that asking for help isn't weakness, that being honest about struggling is braver than pretending you're fine. "My family isn't conventional," Emma said. "My mom died when I was 3. My stepmom used to be a CEO who almost died from her own bad choices. My dad cleans offices and has a college degree he got in his 30s. We've all been broken in different ways, but we've also all chosen to keep going, to keep trying, to keep believing that tomorrow might be better than today. And that, I think, is what family means. Not perfection, just showing up for each other. Again and again, even when it's hard." In the audience, Ethan held Celeste's hand and cried without shame. Emma had become extraordinary, not because she was perfect, but because she was real, because she understood that life was complicated and messy and beautiful all at once. That night, at the celebratory dinner, Emma announced she was going to medical school. She wanted to help people the way her dad had helped Celeste, wanted to notice the ones who were drowning and couldn't ask for help. "You don't have to save the world," Ethan said. "I'm not trying to save the world, just maybe a few people in it. The way you saved Celeste." "I didn't save her. She saved herself. You made it impossible for her to keep pretending. That's the same thing." Maybe it was. Maybe noticing someone's pain and refusing to look away was its own kind of salvation. Maybe showing up was all any of them could really do. On what would have been Michelle's 45th birthday, Ethan and Celeste took Emma to the beach. They didn't talk about Michelle much, didn't make it maudlin or heavy, just existed in a space where Michelle's memory was part of the fabric of their lives instead of the thing that defined them. Emma found a sand dollar and declared it was a sign from her mom. Celeste built a sandcastle with the focused intensity she brought to everything. Ethan watched his family and thought about how strange life was, how you could lose everything and find something different, how grief and joy could exist in the same space, how love didn't replace love, it just added layers. "What are you thinking about?" Celeste asked, sitting beside him. "How lucky I am. How easily this could have gone differently." "You mean if you hadn't found my cigarettes? If I hadn't been paying attention? If I'd minded my own business? If I'd been the kind of person who could walk away from someone in trouble?" "But you're not. You've never been that person." "No, I really haven't." They sat in silence while Emma played in the waves, and Ethan thought about all the small choices that had led them here. His choice to check on Celeste that first night instead of calling security. Her choice to trust him enough to be honest. Their choice, again and again, to keep showing up for each other even when it was hard. Life wasn't perfect. Celeste still had bad days where the COPD made breathing hard and the cravings came back with a vengeance. Ethan still had nights where he couldn't sleep, where the grief ambushed him at random moments. Emma still asked questions about her mother that had no good answers, but they were alive. They were trying. They were real with each other in a world that constantly demanded performance. And in the end, maybe that was all anyone could ask for. Not perfection, not a story with all the rough edges smoothed away. Just honest people trying their best and refusing to give up on each other. The sun set over the ocean, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that were almost too beautiful to be real. Emma ran up from the water, soaking wet and laughing, and declared this the best day ever. Celeste wrapped her in a towel and kissed her forehead. Ethan took a photo with his phone because moments like this deserved to be remembered. And somewhere, in some space between memory and hope, Michelle smiled. Because her daughter was happy. Because the man she'd loved had found love again. Because life, in all its messy complexity, had continued after all. The story didn't end there. Stories never really end. They just keep going, one day flowing into the next, one choice leading to another, one moment of courage building on the last. But if there was a lesson in any of it, it was this. Sometimes saving a life starts with simply noticing, with refusing to look away from someone else's pain, with choosing to care even when it's inconvenient or complicated or terrifying. Because we're all drowning sometimes, and we all need someone willing to throw us a lifeline, even when we insist we're fine, especially then.